dude. I'm not mad, boy. Show your face. I'm not mad at you. It's okay. We don't change our plates every morning, just so you know. It'll be the same plate when you come talk to us later. That's fine. U.S. citizen, former. You want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Renee Nicole Good wasn't a lot of things, but she also wasn't someone that deserves to be used to further divide Americans by the desperation of a governor and a mayor drowning in an ongoing fraud investigation.
Our police, many of whom are Somali themselves, are trusted partners in keeping people safe. They will not collaborate with any federal agency around doing immigration enforcement work. They will not cooperate with ICE agents. Minneapolis will continue to be a safe haven for undocumented immigrants. In Minneapolis, we have your back. You will be protected and respected by our city employees, regardless of your immigration status. I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
Minnesotans, don't take the bait. Do not take the bait. Do not allow them to deploy federal troops into here. Do not allow them to invoke the Insurrection Act. Do not allow them to declare martial law.
She also doesn't deserve to be used by the Mockingbird media as gasoline to be thrown on a fire.
As the vehicle passes, you can see the dark-colored SUV driven by Renee Nicole Good. That's on the right there in the back. The surveillance video taken by a home nearby. Agents can be seen milling about near the vehicle, then converging on it. And then you see right there the SUV begins to move, and that's when the shots are fired.
There's not the slightest doubt in your mind, having viewed it, that the victim, you still believe that she deliberately tried to round him despite seeing this video.
Look, I don't know what is in a person's heart or in a person's head, and obviously we're not going to get the chance to ask this woman what was going on. What I am certain of is that she violated the law. If people want to say that we should have a legitimate debate about, you know, what was she really doing, right? Was she panicking when she drove into this officer, or was she actually trying to ram him? That's a reasonable conversation. What's not reasonable is for so many of you to plaster all over the media that this was an innocent woman and that the ICE agent committed murder, which is what many of you have said explicitly and some of you have said implicitly.
She also wasn't at the wrong place at the wrong time. And she wasn't merely a legal observer. She was an anti-ICE radical and apparently knew exactly what she was doing.
They clearly wanted her out of there because she was the main car leading the protest, is my understanding. I talked to another guy who was driving behind her, but she was very successful in blocking traffic. She was doing what she was set out to do, and so they wanted to get her the hell out of there. Yeah.
So it looked like she was impeding ICE vehicles.
Definitely, yeah. Okay. That was her goal.
Did you guys know that she had enrolled her kid in a charter school in Minneapolis that was training parents to fight ICE? Because she absolutely did. The New York Post has an article out where they dug into this Southside Family Charter School a little bit. Apparently this school is where Renee Good, who was fairly new to Minneapolis, was introduced to ICE protesting in the first place. Oddly enough, this school sounds way worse than a Leering Center. It was opened in 1972 to have an unabashed focus on social justice education. No, really, this is straight from their website. We integrate social justice into every grade level, telling the stories of the people, not the people in power, and helping students understand history and their role in making the world a better place. A gym teacher who retired last month said that current events like George Floyd were a regular part of the curriculum. This is for little kids. So the article goes on to say that it was through her involvement with the community at Southside Family Charter School that Renee Good got involved with ICE Watch, a group dedicated to disrupting ICE.
And clearly her wife knew as well.
You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
So as the left continues down this path, it appears that Renee Good will only be the first of many. John Bound reporting for InfoWars.
Indeed, yes, the first of many she will be. I think he's right about that. Unfortunately, who knows what's going to happen next. But yeah, they're trying to get their civil war going, aren't they? The Podesta plan or whatever it is that they're trying to get going. And I think they're lamenting the fact that her skin color wasn't exactly the perfect skin color for their needs, if you know what I mean. Unlike George Floyd, who had the perfect skin color. Her name was not Georgetta. Instead, it was Renee. So, yes, it will be a pretty interesting new year, I think. Don't you guys? Anyway, hello and welcome. It's the Diamond Report Live, and this is Doug Diamond. It is January 11th, 9:06 p.m. So let's take a look at the news. We've got many things to look at yet again tonight, and hopefully our internet connection this week will remain stable. If you guys were with me last week, we had about a 30-minute period there where my internet was completely out. But if you went back and watched the show that was uploaded later on, I removed that part. I left a little bit of the explanation toward the end, but I tried to, not make people wait. It seems sort of silly to have people wait when you can just edit that stuff out. So that's the beauty of editing it out in post, and that's what we did last week. So hello and welcome. Yes, the Diamond Report Live, and let's take a look at Hal's website first. We've got Hal Turner Radio Show pulled up, and some of the headlines on the site. Intel, Iran, not if, but rather when. I think that kind of is more or less self-explanatory. Iran protests, 2,000 dead in 48 hours is another one of his headlines here. And then this one we'll look at a little bit closer in just a little bit. Security guard protecting Maduro gives chilling account of U.S. weaponry in the Venezuela raid. So that one was pretty interesting, I thought. Some advanced weaponry may have been used. And then he's got some other headlines here. One of them I'm not going to bother with because I don't think it's worth mentioning because it's unverified, uncorroborated. He tends to put things up that he's not 100% verified. So, yes, no thanks, I believe, in the rules-based order. No brain needed. So, yes, HalTurnerRadioshow.com. It's a good site. And then, the video that we started out tonight with, this has been the big story of the last few days. Minneapolis ICE agent shot a woman who blocked the road and then struck the officer with her SUV. Renee Nicole Good, 37-year-old mother of three, was shot to death by ICE officer Jonathan Ross after she blocked the street with her vehicle, accelerated, and struck Ross. AJ on InfoWars said that the mainstream media has omitted the frames of the video that show Officer Ross bouncing off the hood of Good's vehicle after she accelerated and struck him in order to incite an uprising and create division. Yeah, that's exactly what they did. I don't know if you guys have seen that footage, but yes, you can clearly see that she does hit him and he lurches forward on foot. He's standing in front of the car, and then he fires. Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem said that the activism against ICE constituted domestic terrorism. Leftists are claiming that Good was murdered after Ross threw himself against her SUV. That's not at all what happened, but it doesn't matter. Facts are just unimportant little details to most people on the left, at least. New York Post report that Good was involved in an organized protest obstructing officers throws a wrench into the just a driver or just a woman narrative that some corporate media outlets ran earlier. Update, new video shows Renee Nicole Good's Honda Pilot struck the ICE officer Jonathan Ross. Scroll to 3 minutes and 30 seconds into this video, and you can see Officer Ross bounce off of the hood of Good's SUV. Mainstream media reported that the ICE agent was not in Good's path and omitted part of the video. Yes, they just edited it out. If it's not convenient, doesn't fit their narrative, they just take it out. It's like it never happened. Just like all of those stories that they don't report on, because if they don't talk about it, it never happened. So they think. That's on G. Edward Griffin's website, needtoknow.news. And then this one too, U.S. seizes Russian-flagged oil tanker in the North Atlantic, drawing rebuke from Moscow. There are the two pirates who did it right there. Ahoy. On January 7th, U.S. forces boarded and took by force a Russian-flagged oil tanker, the Marinera. And no, it's not full of spaghetti sauce. The Marinera in the North Atlantic Ocean that it initially tried to seize off the coast of Venezuela weeks ago in an action that drew condemnation from Moscow. Russia's transportation ministry said that the seizure violated international law. A Russian warship and submarine were reportedly in the vicinity of the Marinera during the seizure, but there was no confrontation. U.S. European Command announced the seizure and said the ship was taken for, quote, violating U.S. sanctions, end quote. Though U.S. economic sanctions don't give the U.S. government the legal right to capture a ship in international waters. The U.S. seized a second tanker on Wednesday near the coast of Venezuela. So they're just seizing ships left and right. I guess that's okay. If it's okay when we do it, apparently. But I wonder what would happen if the Russians seized one of our tankers. How do you think that would go over? My guess is not very well. Anyway, there's a little bit more information on this particular article on needtoknow.news. Why insulting Brigitte Macron online can mean prison time in France. Because she is a man, after all. I think it's been proven once and for all. A French court found 10 people guilty of cyberbullying. France's First Lady, Brigitte Macron, cyberbullying. I got accused of that one time. I got a strike on my YouTube channel, the Diamond Disc YouTube channel, which is now back in action. Resurrected from the dead, as it were, a few months ago. Cyberbullying Hillary Rodham Clinton. That was my accusation. How do you feel about that? Anyway, it says the defendant's crime was falsely claiming on X that the First Lady was born male and characterizing her relationship with French President Emmanuel Macron as pedophilic. That's been 100% proven. But the facts don't matter, again. The French president met his wife when he was about 16 years old. It was actually 14 years old. And she was a 39-year-old drama teacher at his high school. Yes, that's right. Pretending to be a woman. The French Constitution holds that any citizen may therefore speak, write, and publish freely, but then removes the right by adding what is tantamount to the abuse of this liberty is in the cases determined by law. Brigitte Macron has yet to present DNA evidence. And she never will, because she can't, because that would prove she's a liar. Plain and simple. No, in fact, what they do is they go after some little detail, and Candace Owens breaks this down many times over her different broadcasts. They go over some little factoid, some little detail that somebody gets wrong. Like, this is not necessarily true, but just like if you got someone's eye color wrong, for example, they would zero in on that and try and prove how that means everything you say is wrong. Instead of, the simple fact that she can't prove that she is actually a woman. So yes, I'm just glad I am not sitting in France right about now. So they would be knocking down my door most likely. Anyway, yes, I'm actually in the middle of watching the Becoming Brigitte series of Candace's. I don't know if you guys have seen that. I had seen maybe the introduction and or the first episode months ago when she put it out. And I'm up to about, I think, the 5th episode at this point. I'm not sure how many there are, but it's very, very interesting. Let's just say that she has, at least to me, proven that everything she's saying about Brigitte Macron is exactly right, that she was a man. My dog even agreed. I don't know if you heard her. Okay, and then needtoknow.news, another article here. Israel's links to the seizure of Maduro in Venezuela and division of resources. Various commentators point out Israel's link to the capture of Maduro from Venezuela. Zionist billionaire Paul Singer, more on him in just a minute, bought Citgo Oil Company and stands to make profits from Venezuela's oil supply. Max Blumenthal revealed that it will take years to rebuild Venezuela's oil infrastructure. ExxonMobil seeks to restore control over its oil fields. Elon Musk published fake AI videos of Venezuelans celebrating because Musk wants access to Venezuela's lithium and other minerals. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has connected Venezuela to Iran and Hezbollah. Of course, we've mentioned that before. Under the rule of President Hugo Chavez, who was elected president of Venezuela in 1998, relations between Israel and Venezuela rapidly deteriorated as Venezuela strongly supported the rights of the Palestinians and condemned Israeli actions, twice expelling the Israeli ambassador from Venezuela. How about that? Little detail there. Venezuela officially recognized Palestine and established diplomatic relations with the Palestinian Authority on 27th of April, 2009. Then here's a video by James Lee, who you may have heard of. We've mentioned him before on this show. And his videos are usually very thought-provoking. Several videos embedded here in this article on needtoknow.news. And then we've got another one here. Viral story about Somali daycare fraud could be linked to Israel's plan to relocate the Palestinians. We mentioned this last week, and I think it's an important one, but again, are we really that surprised? James Lee suggests that journalist Nick Shirley's viral video about Somali daycare fraud in Minnesota was intended to create animosity against Somalis rather than unite Americans against fraud. The timing of the video is curious as it came out just as Israel was the first country to recognize Somaliland as an independent country. In exchange, Israel gains a strategic military base and the possibility of relocating Palestinian people to the region, which on the surface it sort of seems like that's the obvious thing they would want. They've basically created another Gaza right here and given it a different name, and they're going to export those remaining Palestinians, Gazans, over to this area to get them out of Gaza so they can rebuild it. And that, of course, is just the fraction of the people who are left after they've nearly killed most of them all, over the last few years. So anyway, there is more info here. Again, a James Lee video talking about the whole Somaliland and the Somali daycare thing. Pretty interesting. All right, and then one more from needtoknow.news. RFK Jr. explains gluten allergies exploded in 2006 due to spraying poison on food before harvest. Yeah, Roundup Ready wheat. That's what this little picture here is. The 2006, Monsanto advised farmers to spray its Roundup Ready pesticide with the active ingredient glyphosate on wheat so that it would act as a desiccant to dry it out and prevent mold. RFK Jr. said, and it was so popular that at about 85% of the Roundup that had been used in history had been used since 2006. 85% of it that has been used in history. Wow. A large part of that is as a desiccant. And what that means is that for the first time, they're spraying it right on food at harvest. Yeah, that's something that I learned about several years ago, back when we had several different guests on Lost Arts Radio, a show that I was producing way back when. And there was some really good ones that we did on the whole deal with Roundup, but in particular glyphosate, which is really the same thing, but there's lots of really good information about this. It says definition of a poison, a substance that causes injury, illness, or death, especially by chemical means. So yeah, I didn't know though that gluten allergies have really gone up since 2006. So that's due in large part, I guess, apparently due to this Roundup Ready that has been used so much. So anyway, there you go. All right, and then we have a Liberty Beacon article here. Venezuela and the takedown of the global criminal network. He says here, this editor of this article, some tweets are worth digesting on their own. This one has been doing the rounds. While we wait for verification of various aspects of this tweet, we have heard a similar story from other sources. All right, and it says, we believe the major substance of military incursions into countries such as Venezuela have long taken place. Read the broad descriptions below, and it's easy to appreciate the enormity of the takedown of different aspects of the cabal operations. When we say cabal, we mean, for example, Venezuela's oil reserves being locked into Rockefeller activities and or the CCP. Perhaps ditto for its considerable silver deposits. For those bleating about international law, and there are many out there, we invite readers to listen to the 3-minute video introduction from January 7th this year by John Michael Chambers, who explains in general military terms what is going down and what has been going down for at least 8 or 9 years already. We believe some key phrases. It is a coordinated, multi-year military operation executed under sealed indictments and international wartime jurisdiction. Precision strikes on integrated, high-level criminal targets across continents. Multiple countries are involved. Military tribunals bypass corrupted civil courts. Financial freezes are in place. Evidence chains are locked and mirrored. It says this is about containment, isolation, and extraction. Public exposure comes last. You can only remove the criminals if you have stabilized the system first, so that chaos does not ensue. It is about control. For more than 20 years, Venezuela has been identified as a central operating hub for intelligence, criminal, and political operations spanning multiple continents. These operations trace back through the U.S. administrations from George H.W. Bush through Barack Obama and involve the CIA, foreign governments, and international cabal mafia. It talks about gateway for narcotics and human trafficking, of course. Colombia's cocaine production and so forth, as well as talking about fentanyl. At the same time, Venezuela became a focal point for global election systems. Smartmatic, founded in Venezuela, expanded internationally and later connected with Dominion voting through shared technologies, personnel, and operational pathways. These systems were deployed across dozens of countries, operations tied to Cuba, Serbia, and U.S.-based facilities in Colorado. Kind of brings one to mind a lady named Tina Peters, who happened to be also in Colorado. So I don't think that's an accident. Anyway, there's more here on this story, and I just wanted to bring that up because this is kind of a multi-part. I found several articles about this. I first heard about this from Hal on his nightly radio show. Security guard protecting Maduro gives chilling account of U.S. weaponry in Venezuela raid. So I thought this was really interesting, and see what you guys think. It says this account of the U.S. raid to capture Maduro, provided by a Venezuelan security guard loyal to Maduro, is absolutely chilling and explains a lot about why the tone across Latin America has suddenly changed. Security guard says, on the day of the operation, we didn't hear anything coming. We were on guard, but suddenly all our radar systems shut down without any explanation. The next thing we saw were drones, a lot of drones, flying over our positions. We didn't know how to react. Then the interviewer asks, so what happened next? How was the main attack? The security guard says, after those drones appeared, some helicopters arrived, but there were very few. I think barely 8 helicopters. From those helicopters, soldiers came down, but a very small number, maybe 20 men. But those men were technologically very advanced. They didn't look like anything we fought against before. And then the interviewer asks, and then the battle began? ? Security guard says, yes, but it was a massacre. We had hundreds, but we had no chance. They were shooting with such precision and speed, it seemed like each soldier was firing 300 rounds per minute. We couldn't do anything. The interviewer asks, and your weapons, didn't they help? Security guard says, no help at all, because it wasn't just the weapons. At one point, they launched something. I don't know how to describe it. It was like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly, I felt like my head was exploding from the inside. We all started bleeding from the nose. Some were vomiting blood. We fell to the ground, unable to move. The interviewer says, and your comrades, did they manage to resist? The security guard says, no, not at all. Those 20 men, meaning the Americans, without a single casualty, killed hundreds of us. See, last week I reported on the show that the only number I could find was a total of 40 people were killed, and none of those Americans. But this person is saying hundreds of them were killed. We had no way to compete with their technology, with their weapons. I swear I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't even stand up after the sonic weapon or whatever that was. So do you think the rest of the region should think twice about confronting the Americans, was the question here. Security guard says, without a doubt, I'm sending a warning to anyone who thinks they can fight the United States. They have no idea what they're capable of. After what I saw, I never want to be on the other side of that again. They're not to be messed with. So that's interesting, isn't it? It sounds like a little bit of a propaganda thing there. So I don't know whether to believe this or not. There's a little bit more here. But first I thought, well, there's probably nothing to it just based on those last couple lines. It almost sounds like, oh, well, it could be false information or we know they have that sort of technology. Perhaps that was used, but maybe it was embellished to make it sound like the U.S. is somehow tougher than it actually is. But, I don't really have any doubt that he's probably right about what he's talking about here. So I did find a few more articles about this. Here's a Gateway Pundit article. Must watch. Peter Doocy shows footage of himself being hit by a similar sonic weapon recounted by a Venezuelan soldier during the Maduro capture. So you can see here, it's not just Hal that picked up this story. There are others, Gateway Pundit and other outlets who have picked this story up. And then you guys probably know who Peter Doocy is from Fox News. The video is down here. I haven't really watched it, but it is embedded here. Doocy shows footage of similar sonic weapon recounted by Venezuelan soldier. What I don't know is if so he is out here in the field. Let me see what happens if they show it. They're not going to show him getting a nosebleed or anything, I don't think. But it does say May 3rd, 2013. Okay. Yeah, so he kind of jumps back. Doocy replayed footage of himself from 2013 at Quantico, being hit with a weapon that felt really hot. So, we know that those sorts of things exist. We've talked about them on this show before. And I just wanted to mention, though, that there are others talking about the story. So I do think there's probably something to it. Yeah, White House suggests U.S. military used powerful sonic weapon to take out Venezuelan soldiers during Maduro capture. Witness says it's like he's never seen anything like it. That is simply more information here about what we were already reading on Hal's site. I think this is really pretty much just the same thing. Looks like pretty much verbatim between the interviewer and the military person. So I think I've got another tab here, one of them, on X, where we've got some more information. But I just thought that was kind of interesting that the true story and the greater impact of it may be coming out. And it turns out that it probably wasn't just 40 people who were killed. It was probably hundreds, if this guy's right. And supposedly he was there, although I don't know how he lived through it. So it does make one wonder for sure. Venezuela gives the U.S. 30 million barrels of oil. Isn't that nice? Gives. The gift comes as President Trump pushes American oil companies to invest billions of dollars to rebuild Venezuela's energy sector. So yes, it's the oil company is going to do it, not the American taxpayer, supposedly. It says the Trump administration told oil executives at the White House Friday that Venezuela has already given the U.S. 30 million barrels of oil, which are expected to be sold by the U.S. at market price. The gift comes as the president pushes American oil companies to invest billions of dollars to rebuild Venezuela's energy sector. Trump previously said Venezuela's interim government will send the U.S. between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil. So, dealing with ConocoPhillips, Exxon, and Shell, I guess, in particular. Yesterday, 30 million barrels of oil was given to us by Venezuela. Trump said, we want to thank Venezuela for that. We want to thank them. It's a whole different Venezuela. It's going to be very successful, and the people of the United States are going to be big beneficiaries. Oh, is that right? Well, we might have slightly lower gas prices. Other than that, I can't see it really affecting the American people that much personally, but I do think the fat cats at the top will make lots of money off of this whole thing, don't you? All right, and then this article, which is another Michael Snyder blog post here. I thought it was a good one. We are living in World War III. There have been 24 new developments. Those that have been waiting for World War III to arrive can stop because it's already here. The largest war in Europe since World War II just continues to escalate. Multiple wars are raging in the Middle East. An effort to overthrow the Iranian government is underway. China is threatening Taiwan. The U.S. is seizing Russian oil tankers. Venezuela was just attacked, and now we are being warned that military operations in Mexico, Colombia, Cuba, and Greenland could soon commence. As I mentioned the other day, this is Michael Snyder talking here, over half of the nations on the entire planet are either engaged in military conflict or are funding military conflict. A time of global war is upon us, and so many war rumors are flying around that I could not possibly keep up with them all. But I certainly will do my best to keep my readers informed following our 24 of the latest developments. So that is of the posting of this yesterday. So here's what they are. It appears that, and this is number one, it appears that Iranian protesters are being gunned down on a widespread basis now. One Iranian doctor told Time magazine, I guess, that 6 hospitals in Tehran have recorded a total of at least 217 protester deaths. Wow. And then it goes into some information about that story. 217 protester deaths in Iran. Protesters, this is number 2. Protesters aren't just being gunned down in Tehran. According to the NCRI, at least 10 young people were just shot by government security forces in Fardis. 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 And I'm looking to see where that even is. I guess that's also in Iran. Yeah. Yep. Also mentioning Tehran there. Number 3, internet access for the general population in Iran has been completely cut off. Number 4, one expert is telling us that the primary reason why the Iranian government shut down the internet was because they intended to use violence against the protesters. Number 5, the protesters in Iran are not backing down. In fact, it is being reported that important buildings are being set on fire in multiple cities. I think we said last week that it sounds like a kind of like a coup d'etat, color revolution sort of thing that the CIA does. I don't know if the CIA is involved, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit, like they have been in other countries. Number 6, apparently even billboards of Ayatollah Khomeini are even being set on fire. Number 7, initially U.S. officials didn't seem to believe that the protesters had a chance of overthrowing the regime, but now that assessment appears to be changing. Number 8, President Trump continues to threaten to attack Iran if the Iranian government doesn't stop killing protesters. So just the excuse they need, isn't it? Number 9, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas says that Iran is ready for war with both the United States and Israel. Number 10, the Russians just hit the Ukrainian city of Lviv with warheads from an Oreshnik missile. Yeah, I did see the footage of that. It looks like lightning strikes, and we saw that probably pretty close to a year ago when they demonstrated what the Oreshnik system can do. And they have just used that against the city of Lviv in Ukraine. Says Vladimir Putin unleashed his sinister nuclear-capable 8,000-mile-per-hour Oreshnik missile in a strike on the outskirts of Ukrainian city Lviv, Russia confirmed. The menacing attack close to NATO and EU territory was aimed at Europe's largest underground gas storage facility, it is believed. So yeah, that was item number 10 here on this list. It's pretty long. I'll leave the rest of these to you, but there's a lot here. And again, this is from Michael Snyder, who I think does a really good job. And thank you to Mr. Snyder. He has continued to refer people to the Diamond Report through Substack. We've got a link there on his, I guess, Substack page to the Diamond Report, and I continue to get folks coming over to see what's going on with the Diamond Report from Michael Snyder. So thank you to him. So that is an article posted on the Liberty Beacon. 2 more from this site. I thought this one was interesting. Monsanto sues the CV19 VAXX manufacturers alleging copyright infringement. What, did they write a song or something? Bayer Monsanto wants its cut of the kill shot spike protein profits. You could not make this stuff up. Yeah, Monsanto sues CV19 VAXX manufacturers alleging copyright infringement. Somewhere this just feels like an outing, as in hideous publicity, the kind that joins some dots for people out there in the population. Check out Dr. Nicholas Hulscher's byline from Zyklon B to glyphosate to mRNA, as well as the first line of his article, which we put in red. Yes, it's absurd. Popcorn time, guys. A gruesome spotlight just got cast on Bayer Monsanto and the entire pharma enterprise. So yes, they're suing the CV19 vax manufacturers, apparently. In a development that perfectly captures the absurdity of the COVID era, Bayer Monsanto has filed federal lawsuits against Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. Allegedly, they unlawfully used Monsanto-developed mRNA technology to manufacture CV19 VAXXs. The very injections that have resulted in mass deaths are now the subject of high-stakes patent litigation over gene engineering methods originally developed for genetically modified crops in the 1980s. How about that? I'm trying to be a little careful and space out my words slightly, which it may not matter as far as the algorithm on YouTube, but I'm just trying to be careful so I don't lose another YouTube channel, which I don't necessarily want to do today. More on that coming soon. According to the filed complaint, Monsanto scientists pioneered techniques to stabilize mRNA by removing destabilizing genetic sequences and substituting alternative codons to force higher protein expression. Methods the lawsuit alleges were essential to making the COVID spike protein usable as a vax antigen. Pfizer and BioNTech are accused of redesigning the SARS-CoV-2 spike gene using this patented approach, stripping out roughly 100 destabilized sequences to ensure the mRNA would not degrade before producing large amounts of spike protein. So it looks to me like Bayer Monsanto wants credit for all the millions and millions and millions of deaths worldwide from the product that apparently they helped develop. So there you go. Shouldn't they be included in all the lawsuits too then? Sounds to me like they should. So there's quite a bit more here on this article, including some screenshots of the actual plaintiff's complaint for patent infringement. So there you go. If you took a CV19 jab, you are now a copyrighted product. Isn't that nice? All right, and then another big news thing that came out this week. RFK Jr. flips the food pyramid. Did you know about this? It's about time. U.S. Health Secretary RFK Jr. today, this was on the 8th, so what was that, Thursday, unveiled new dietary guidelines for Americans. The new U.S. food pyramid, you guys remember that, probably from your childhood or, when you were kids or maybe high school or I don't know when, but says the new U.S. food pyramid puts protein, dairy, healthy fats, vegetables, and fruit at the top with grains at the bottom. Not at the top. RFK Jr. today unveiled new dietary guidelines. The new food pyramid is inverted. He calls the changes the most significant reset of federal nutrition policy in history. You can see it here. Protein, dairy, and healthy fats, fruits and vegetables at the top, which means you should get the most of those things. And then you can see as it goes down the list here, really fruits and vegetables, nuts, those types of things are about midway down. Whole grains at the bottom. So this is apparently available on realfood.gov if you want the full quality image here. The guidelines effective through 2030 will become the default for what's served to school children, the military, veterans, and the elderly and low-income families that participate in federal programs like WIC and Head Start. It should be the same for everybody, don't you think? Inverted food pyramid. Pretty interesting that it is a pyramid, isn't it? And now it's inverted. Federal policy promoted and subsidized highly processed foods and refined carbohydrates and turned a blind eye to the disastrous consequences. Today, the lies stop. The food pyramid was upside down before. We just righted it. Kennedy said people may think the new pyramid's upside down, given that the prior pyramid allotted the largest area to grains and the smallest area to fats. But it was actually upside down before. We just righted it, Kennedy said. So, way to go, RFK Jr. I think that's a big one. New guidelines directly addresses ultra-processed foods and added sugars. So there you go. More information on the Liberty Beacon on this article. And again, if you're not a Substack subscriber to the Diamond Report, please sign up. It's totally free, and you will get an email probably on Tuesday when I send these out that will have a list of all of these articles, have a link back to all of these articles I talk about tonight. And indeed every week. All right, we have 3 headlines here on technocracy.news. Farmland shock. Georgia grower drops 3,000 acres, warns of unplanted ground in 2026. There is a catastrophic collapse of American agriculture coming in 26-27. Say adios to generational farmers. It says wave 2, the fields of growing weeds instead of nutritious crops. Banks are expecting record bankruptcies. Remaining farmers are cutting back acreage to try to survive. Monopolies, government meddling, and the United Nations, as well as globalization, all play a part. But collectively, they are killing the goose that laid the golden egg in the first place, the American farmer. So that is the top most recent article on technocracy.news. Indefensible debanking soars to record high in the UK. The UK is tearing itself into shreds. The banks are now the judge, jury, and executioner, closing accounts without notifying the account holder of the reasons. There is no appeal. This is the most egregious, draconian, and mean-spirited form of censorship. And it could scar you for life as your name is reported to other banks. Sounds like the beast system, doesn't it? Meanwhile, the banks hide behind the excuse of, quote, fighting crime. It sounds like the beast system being rolled out in the UK. And who's the leader of the UK? I ask. That would be KC3. Yes. His Majesty, as some people call him. So that is the second article here on technocracy.news. Then this one, scientists create strain of bird flu that has 100% death rate in mammals. So that is lovely. Just lovely. Do these genetic scientists have a death wish for the human species, or are they just plain stupid? I think it's probably the former thing, not the latter, don't you? This study confirms lab-made hybrid H5N1 strain invades immune cells, replicates in human blood, spreads to the brain, and kills every mammal tested. Didn't we get enough of gain-of-function research with SARS-CoV-2? And then this person who wrote this says, as I have written, the only way to stop these nutcakes is to take away their key cards and their containment suits, immediately escort them out of their laboratories, permanently ban them from any other scientific research for life, and then raise the buildings to the ground. That's true, but that's not going to happen because they are the people that the globalists want in charge of things. These sorts of scientists are the people that are the ones helping to carry out their technocracy, which I know this author knows that. But anyway, that is the 3 main new articles here on technocracy.news, which is a good site. And then Revolver articles, just a few links that I came across. Thought this one was kind of interesting and not that surprising in a way. It says bombshell, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is, Tim as I call him, and many other people, is set to resign within the next week. Now, I had not heard that he was going to resign before today when I saw this, but I did hear he wasn't going to run again. But this is saying that he's set to resign within the next week, according to multiple reports from within the Walz campaign. This comes after he was referred for a criminal indictment over massive Somali fraud within the state. So let's hope that is indeed what happens. Yes, the hoodie of the Quality Leering Center, 1-800-FRAUD. Yeah, there are some really funny AI videos with this whole Somali and Tim Walz thing. Because all you can do at this point really is laugh, because it's so bad. It's just so unbelievably bad. But no one's really surprised either. All right, and then this one, GoFundMe page for activist Renee Good has been paused. This comes after the new viral video of her committing crimes against ICE officers. So someone started, I don't know if it's an official GoFundMe, that sometimes it's not official. People just start up GoFundMe campaigns when a big story hits like that and just start, raking in money, and they're not necessarily connected to anyone that's actually in the story. That does happen. So this one was paused, and it looks to me like, with this screenshot, $1.5 million had already been raised. Wow. Support for Renee Good's widow and family, which she does have a couple of kids. I guess that's her a little younger. And then, yes, you live, you leer. And then another AI picture here. And there's her with George Floyd. So, anyway, there's some crazy memes out there for sure. But that is a post that I found. I thought it was interesting that the GoFundMe... GoFundMe is not necessarily known for its good decisions. Let's put it that way. And it is interesting that they've decided to shut this one down, according to this person that posted this anyway. Who knows? All right, and then this one on Zero Hedge. Even Google's founders have had enough of California and are saying adios. Google founders Larry Page and Sergey Brin quietly began unwinding portions of their financial empires in California in the days leading up to Christmas, according to corporate filings reviewed by NYT, New York Times, as progressive lawmakers considered a proposed billionaire wealth tax. Billionaire wealth tax. This development confirms our earlier note that California is on an accelerated path towards self-destruction. Of course they are. They have been for many decades. Here are the new details from New York Times report that further confirms our previous reporting. So here's what they're saying here as far as some of the decisions that they have moved forward with, apparently. In the 10 days before Christmas, an entity connected to Sergey Brin, 52, terminated or moved 15 California limited liability companies that oversees some of his business interests and investments out of the state, according to documents seen by the New York Times. 7 of the companies, including those that appear to manage one of Mr. Brin's super yachts, and his interest in a private air terminal at San Jose's International Airport, were converted into Nevada entities. Sergey Brin is joining Mr. Page, again, this guy, Larry Page, is in reducing his California presence. More than 45 California LLCs associated with Mr. Page filed documents last month to either become inactive or move out of the state, according to state records. A trust with ties to Mr. Page also purchased a $71.9 million mansion in Miami's Coconut Grove neighborhood. So, some connections to Florida here. Another entity jointly managed by both of them moved out of Cali to Nevada on Christmas Eve. So they are making their move, it looks like. At least the 2 of them are. A couple of Google execs. So pretty interesting. That's on Zero Hedge. And then this one, Revolver News article I found. New info surrounding the real Renee Good changes everything. Does it really? Not for me, I don't think. Our media loves a story like the Renee Good one. They can't wait to get there and strip away context. I'm surprised they didn't try and fool everybody by changing her skin color, like photoshopping it or something, because it would have been so much better had she not been white. You know what I mean? I know you know what I mean. Could you imagine, though, how much more furious and just absolutely insane people would be about this if she would have been black or some other color and not white? All right, it says, our media loves a story like Renee Good. They can't wait to get in there and strip away context, sand down the edges, and wrap the whole thing in political theater. And this way, they can sell the public a story that never actually happened. CNN's headline tells you everything you need to know about how this case is being framed. A mother of three, a poet, a singer, and a gentle soul shot and killed by ICE. This ridiculous CNN slop reads like a Hallmark tragedy, not a factual account of a radical activist who deliberately put herself in the path of federal agents and then tried to run one over with her 5,000-pound car. Yeah, so anyway, yes, poetry. And she was so gentle. And a singer. What CNN and the rest of the legacy media are refusing to tell readers is that Good was not some poetic random bystander. She was not in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was a trained, committed anti-ICE activist who belonged to a group dedicated to tracking, disrupting, and interfering with ICE operations. She hated ICE. She followed them. And on that day, she used her car as a weapon. And then here's the video, which we've all seen. So anyway, more here. Not really a surprise, but that is on Revolver. And yes, some of the new angles that people have found and published of the video definitely says a lot. Yeah, and then because we saw that at the beginning of the show tonight, so hopefully you guys didn't miss that. Here's the damning email that confirms that the CIA overthrew the U.S. government in 2020. I think we all kind of already knew that, but this is tying it directly to the CIA, overthrowing the U.S. government in 2020. In the final weeks of the 2020 presidential election, Bumbling Joe was struggling. He was unpopular, uninspiring, and clearly not firing on all cylinders. Then the Hunter Biden laptop from hell made an appearance, and suddenly the election was at real risk of slipping out of his shaky hands. The laptop wasn't rumor or speculation. It was real and verifiable, and it contained information that any sane voter would want to know about before casting a ballot for the president. But the deep state wagons started circling right away. Americans were immediately told not to trust their lying eyes. The story was dismissed as Russian disinfo. Social media platforms shut it down almost instantly. Newsrooms buried it. And anyone who questioned the narrative was branded a secret Russian agent. Fast forward to today, the situation is completely unique. These days, fewer Americans are playing the game where we all pretended the 2020 election was the fairest in history, quote unquote, and even fewer Americans believe the laptop was fake. All the 2020 stuff that once had to be whispered can now be said out loud, and people are screaming from the rooftops. We now know that it is not just the American people who were lied to, but how flagrantly it all went down. The now infamous letter signed by 51 former intelligence officers, known these days as the spies who lied, didn't start organically. In other words, this wasn't some good faith warning to the public by high-ranking bigwigs who cared deeply about the truth. It was actually coordinated political intervention. These high-ranking current and former officials, intelligence officials, many with deep ties to the CIA, used their credibility to create a completely false narrative at the exact moment it could do the most damage to Donald Trump and save Joe Biden's campaign. It was all hands on deck moment, and it was all a lie. So this goes into how it's all tied to the CIA. Here's the email. The damning email obtained by King Solomon through the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, confirms the CIA conspired and succeeded to overthrow the U.S. government on November 3rd, 2020. In a stunning exchange, CIA Director Mike Morrell turns to fellow director John Brennan, who some people are saying is actually still covertly running the agency. He turns to fellow director John Brennan and asks if he would join in toppling the United States government during the November 3rd, 2020 election. Brennan not only agrees, but also expresses his gratitude. CIA Mike Morrell, quote, "Can I add your name to this list? We will be adding Leon Panetta, Sue Gordon, Je Johnson, George, Lisa Monaco, and Mike Rogers, and working on adding Dan Coates, Mike Rogers, and Tom Bossert, and lots of other IC career folk, I guess intelligence community, career folk. Trying to give the incapacitated vegetable, particularly during the debate on Thursday, a talking point to push back on Trump on this issue." CIA John Brennan, "Okay, Michael, add my name to the list. Good initiative. Thanks for asking me to sign on." It wasn't just 51 former intelligence officials who were involved. The CIA itself was actively involved, as well as its director, Gina Haspel, approved it. So there you go. And there's more here, including the 51 intel officials who overthrew the U.S. government named here. 1 through 51. Very interesting. Some names on it you've undoubtedly heard of. So I don't know if this goes anywhere. My guess is probably not. If it's in Pam Bondi's or Kash Patel's sphere of influence. But my guess is it will go nowhere. However, the information's there. Someone needs to be arrested. 51 people here. They should all be raided in the early morning hours. But they won't be. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. That's a Revolver article. And then there's been a lot of talk about Greenland lately. Greenland. I always think of Princess Bride when he talks about being unemployed in Greenland. Former MI6 chief says Trump should be given control of Greenland in the interests of European security. A former MI6 chief has expressed support for Trump as he believes the U.S. president obtaining control of Greenland is in the interests of European security. Sir Richard Dearlove, the ex-head of Britain's intelligence agency, MI6, said that there was a strong argument for the U.S. to have Greenland in a bid to deter Chinese threats. The 80-year-old has urged Denmark to lease the territory to the Americans for 100 years in a bid to strengthen security in Europe. It comes shortly after Venezuelan President Maduro was captured by U.S. Special Forces. He's facing drug trafficking charges in New York as top Venezuelan officials are accused of working with international drug trafficking rings to siphon drugs into the U.S. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer did not have the right to claim Greenland before adding its future should be decided by the island in Denmark. So that's interesting. Sir Richard told Talk TV on Friday, there's a strong argument for reinforcing Europe's security by putting a much greater representation of American forces, which are the only ones that can effectively cope up in Greenland. Now, I would have thought what's possible for Denmark and the U.S. to make some agreement. Why the H don't the Danes lease them Greenland for 100 years? So that's a good point, and I think what's come up for a lot of people here, and this is, again, something Hal Turner has talked about on his radio show and on his website, and so full kudos to him, because this is new news to me, and probably is to you guys as well. And I thought this article was really good. Why is the U.S. focusing on Greenland of late? War, which, that's sort of obvious. We've all seen the maps, but turns out that may not be exactly right. And I wanted to go somewhere else with this as well. But check this out. Many people were surprised and perplexed when Trump mentioned making Greenland part of the United States based on geopolitical reality. It has to be this way, Hal is saying. A slew of people went to look at maps to see where Greenland is in relation to the U.S., and the maps were the Mercator projection maps for children and journalists, which is what we're seeing here. A Mercator projection map. Did you guys know about this? I've heard it called that before, but I didn't know there was any alternative. But Mercator projection maps, which we all grew up with in school and use to this day, are not a useful guide to where any countries or territories actually are in the real world that we live in. So, did that catch your attention? Greenland, as viewed from a proper polar projection map. Now, this is not a Mercator projection map. So check this out. Why Greenland? Well, because Moscow bases almost all of their strategic military assets on the Kola Peninsula next to Finland, which is scribbled over with hot pink highlighter. So right here. So this is the strategic military assets of Russia right here. This is where the Russian ICBM silos, submarine bases, and their strategic bombers are. Again, this is Sweden, Finland's right here, and it's right next to it. If you look at the flight path, either ballistic or powered, from the Kola Peninsula to anywhere in the lower 48, situated between the two hot pink lines, then everything goes over Greenland. So here we go. So we got this area here where everything's situated. We've got the two hot pink lines going this way over Greenland. And then the U.S. is down here, right? Here's the U.S. West Coast. Here's the U.S. Well, this is Maine right here. Here's the beginning of the East Coast. So you can see here from Greenland how important of a strategic location this is. And looking at this map, you would never know it because it's up here. And why would it matter? But no, you're looking down over the pole. Look how different that is. Isn't that amazing? I think it's really, really interesting. It says Greenland is the only theater where any strategic exchange between Washington and Moscow is contested. If you want to intercept a ballistic missile, the best point to do so is at the apogee, at the top of the flight path. The shortest route for an interceptor to get to an apogee is from directly below the apogee. That is where Greenland is. So where the missile reaches its high point would be about the midway area here. See? Here. Or, I guess, here. So, without me stating what should happen here, this is why the Trump administration says they need Greenland for national security. The other thing that is happening is that the northern passage through the Arctic is opening up, and soon there will be Chinese cargo ships sailing through the Arctic to Rotterdam. It's faster than the Suez, and the ships aren't limited to Suez max size. So China and EU trade is going to accelerate a lot. So that's talking about over in here. Anyway, this means that Chinese submarines will also be venturing under the Arctic into the northern Atlantic if they aren't doing so already. Hence, the northeast coast of Greenland serves not one but two critical strategic security objectives of U.S. national security. If this wasn't clear to you, please understand that the Mercator global map projection is for children and journalists only. It is not a useful guide to where any countries or territories actually are in the real world that we live in. No self-respecting adult should be using Mercator for their worldview. Anyone saying there must be some other secret reason for Trump being interested in Greenland is a certified ignoramus, according to Hal here. All we do in Greenland now is early warning radar. With hypersonic missiles, there's no such thing as early warning. We have to have sufficient firepower to take them down before they reach our land. We need to be building bases in Greenland yesterday. So, anyway, again, this is Hal Turner's report on this. So full props to Hal, and go subscribe if you're not already. It's $1 a week. Pretty much anybody can afford that. And you get some really good information here. This is not something I knew about. I didn't really know the difference between Mercator projection and polar projection maps, but looking at this map definitely makes a lot of sense. I'm not saying that they should go grab Greenland, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that when you look at it this way, now it makes more sense versus looking at it like this. Now, the next step I wanted to take was perhaps these polar projection maps and the fact that things aren't exactly the way we see them and not exactly where we're told they are, could have to do, in my opinion, with the whole flat earth thing. Maybe people are seeing this flat earth thing and seeing the discrepancies between getting from here to there and all of these, different things that the flat earthers talk about, where things aren't as we're told. Not saying the ice wall is necessarily real, but the distances from one location to another are not necessarily what we're told. Would make sense if you're looking at this as a map, or even perhaps on one of these spread out on a round circular Earth. Because what I don't know is if the Mercator maps are for children and journalists, what about all of the globes that were shown? Are those Mercator maps stretched out on a ball? I don't know. It was just an idea. It was just a thought, because strategically, again, Greenland, this looks like a totally different situation, a totally different animal to me. But that, again, is a polar projection map, not a Mercator map. And to me, I think you could probably do some explaining with the whole flat earth thing, saying that maybe this accounts for the differences in what we're seeing. I don't know. Just a thought. So let me know what you guys think about all that.
In a major escalation, the Trump administration has deployed approximately 2,000 federal agents to Minneapolis, Minnesota. FBI, DHS, HSI, and ICE targeting widespread industrial-scale fraud in state-administered social services programs, while 5 states have had $10 billion in federal funds frozen for social services programs.
You have an understanding that 1,000 whistleblowers running an account on X have come forward to expose fraud in Minnesota state agencies, and they have been entirely ignored by Tim Walz and have even been retaliated against. Is that accurate?
That is correct. Even this morning, I got another message.
Make no mistake, we should be concerned about fraud in our state government. We cannot effectively deliver programs and services if we can't earn the public's trust.
The Tim Walz administration has utterly failed to protect Minnesota taxpayers and vulnerable citizens, ignoring years of credible reports and retaliating against those who spoke up, often by claiming they were racist or Islamophobic.
So today, if someone asks me, should I report fraud within DHS, I say no, no, no. It is career suicide plus a whole lot more. In our face-to-face meetings with a group of whistleblowers, they revealed that retaliation now includes threats of being fired with cause, which means you do not get unemployment insurance in the state of Minnesota, being blacklisted from all state agencies, and then there was a veiled threat of the use of military intelligence against them. They later informed me that it was discovered that in some targeted employees or suspected whistleblowers' personnel files were pictures of their homes and their cars. They also described that supervisors asked them questions about their families that to them felt like a threat. One example was, we need to know where your kids go to school and where their bus stops are.
Fending off the links to fraud, Governor Tim Walz has nervously welcomed federal cooperation.
We have a requirement that the House run an audit, which they did not do. You are the gatekeepers on this. Demand that there's data practices, and if they have emails showing that I have committed fraud, you should get those.
Which agency will provide oversight? Who will be the investigators? Will be audited? How often? Will the Attorney General's office play a role in that? Can you just speak to that?
Those conducting oversight will, to a certain extent, probably make themselves known to us.
While Attorney General Keith Ellison has already been exposed.
Your office was involved when Feeding Our Future was sued for the first time.
And I'll call them in my office and demand some explanations. Right?
I'm one of them, those guys you're talking about. April 30th, I got shut down and they put me on BIOS.
You say April?
April 30th, yeah.
You mean throughout the whole summer and the fall?
Yep, and I have...
You ain't got no money since then?
No, yeah. I have like 10 pilots sitting up to that safari.
Attorney General Keith Ellison was focused on one thing and one thing only, and that was keeping these folks in business. There were no questions that he asked of these folks about how the kids are doing, the operation, how they're getting fed, who's being helped. Instead, the focus was entirely on ensuring that the money continues to flow. And I'll add that he went so far as to say that he was going to fight these people in reference to the state agencies. The state agencies are his client.
Yeah, and when you said money's going to flow, did money flow to Mr. Ellison's campaign a couple weeks later from some of the folks who were in that meeting?
Sure did.
How much, do we know how much that was?
I do not have that number.
So it wasn't just overlooking the fraud. They were actively trying to make sure this program continued, and then they benefited from that politically with contributions to their campaign, all in this same year, all in 2021, when this was all coming to a head. Is that accurate?
That is my understanding.
Meanwhile, America asks, why are we even paying taxes? The United States collects roughly $2.4 trillion annually in individual federal income taxes. Following long-needed investigations and reform, the real fraud numbers could exceed the taxpayers' contribution. Meanwhile, Somalia had billions in debt forgiven as it digs itself further into the pockets of the American taxpayer.
The full scope of the problem is not just criminal fraud, but a culture of profiting from government programs in perpetuity, not as a safety net, but as an industry. I've personally met and had discussions with folks who identify themselves as consultants for multiple entities accepting government benefits. They have made a career out of showing people how to leverage the gaps in government oversight to maximize benefit payments.
Was there any threat of a lawsuit from the Somali community and folks affiliated with Feeding Our Future?
Mr. Jordan, there was more than a threat. They actually did it.
They did? And what was the alleged claim in that lawsuit?
That they were victims of racial discrimination.
Oh, they played the race card, huh? All this fraud going on, money going out, and they played the race card.
The fraud hearings won't just be another wrist slapping for the D.C. Country Club. These thieves have finally awakened the sleeping giant. John Bound reporting for InfoWars.
Yeah, how about that report? I thought that was a good one. Very interesting. Yes, John Bound does good work out there. You can find his stuff on band.video. He's also on Substack for anybody who is interested in his work. So yes, let's see here. Let's continue on with the next bit of news. But I thought that was pretty interesting about the different maps and stuff. I wanted to share that with you guys. And again, full props over to Hal. I thought he did a good explanation of that on his website here that we just went through. All right, Zero Hedge article. Trump ordered taking U.S. out of UN climate orgs caps flood of corporate exits. President Trump put another dent in the environmental, social, and governance ESG movement, withdrawing the U.S. from the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and 65 other international organizations dedicated to climate and social justice. So that's good news. Trump's orders caps a recent trend in which many corporations have also canceled their decades-long commitments to left-wing globalist and global alliances, undermining what had been a highly influential worldwide movement that once included the world's largest nations and companies. According to the White House statement, which is linked right here, Trump's January 7th executive order directs all executive departments and agencies to cease participating in and funding 35 non-UN organizations and 31 UN entities that operate contrary to the U.S. national interests, security, economic prosperity, or sovereignty. So how about that? On January 8th, U.S. Treasury Department announced it would no longer provide funding to the Global Climate Fund, which financed many of the UN's climate initiatives. The United States originally joined more than 190 other nations in the UNFCCC, which is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So, very long acronym. That happened in 1992 when the U.S. Senate ratified the treaty. This was followed by the 1997 Kyoto Protocol, in which countries committed to CO2 limits and reduction targets, and the 2015 Paris Agreement, which accelerated national governments' commitments and spending to reduce global temperatures. U.S. Senate did not ratify either of these subsequent accords. Yeah, but we were still signed on to them because we were still taking part in the UN. So pretty interesting, huh? So anyway, we'll see where that goes. But, he's not addressing the real climate change, which is geoengineering, which that's a problem. But getting us out of these globalist situations, these different organizations like the UN and UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and so forth, I think that's good. But sort of remains to be seen. I mean, there's still a lot that Trump needs to do on this, but I think it's a step in the right direction as far as that goes. But I wish he would come out and talk about geoengineering and shut those programs down. That would be the real step toward helping the environment. That's where it needs to start. Unfortunately, he's not even addressing it. And, RFK Jr. knows about it for sure because he's interviewed Mr. Dane on his program before he ever became HHS secretary. So, I don't know. We'll see where it goes. But that is the real climate change, which is ongoing, planetary wide. And, if you want to have a really good synopsis as to what's happening with the climate, geoengineeringwatch.org to me is the best website out there that details exactly what's going on with how the geoengineering programs globally are affecting all of us. So anyway, Zero Hedge, that's where that article was. And then got a few Gateway Pundit articles tonight. Thought this one was wild. Philly police commissioner issues a devastating response to woke sheriff who threatened to arrest ICE agents and warned them, "You don't want this smoke. You don't want this smoke." Okay. Philadelphia County Sheriff Rochelle Bilal calls federal agents as fake law enforcement and vows arrests if they operate in the city. You don't want this smoke, she says. Philadelphia County's scandal-plagued sheriff's disgusting anti-ICE press conference has officially backfired after the city's own police commissioner provided a valuable education lesson for her in a stunning statement. As the Gateway Pundit reported, Philadelphia County Sheriff Rochelle Bilal unleashed a blistering attack on ICE on Thursday, branding the federal agency fake, made-up law enforcement, and threatening that any ICE agents who set foot in her jurisdiction will face arrest and prosecution. Sheriff Bilal, who has faced numerous controversies during her tenure, didn't mince words on Thursday. Perhaps the most disturbing part of the sheriff's tirade was the direct threat of physical confrontation against federal officers. She warned that her office would not hesitate to use force or legal action against agents performing their constitutionally mandated duties. She made sure to praise Philadelphia's Marxist district attorney, Larry Krasner, a man whose decarceration policies have sent crime skyrocketing in the city of brotherly love. According to Bilal, the DA's office is fully prepared to lock up federal agents who attempt to deport criminals and illegal aliens from the city. Criminal illegal aliens from the city. You don't want this smoke because we will bring it to you, she said. Hours following her grandstanding, the Philadelphia Police Commissioner, Kevin Bethel, issued a stinging statement that reminded her of the real purpose of her job. It turns out she evidently thought she possessed authority that she did not exactly have. Bethel then concluded by reaffirming that Philadelphia police will work in cooperation with all law enforcement officials, including those from ICE. How embarrassing for Sheriff Bilal, but even more embarrassing for the people who elected her. Yeah, so it sounds like she did a little bit of an about face once she was corrected by the actual police commissioner. You don't want this smoke. Well, she may not exactly know what she's talking about there. I thought that was very strange. All right, and then another Gateway Pundit article. Thousands protest in Pacific Palisades a year after the fires with no rebuilding. They let us burn. Yep, they sure did, didn't they? While the news media is focused on the anti-ICE protests happening in Minnesota, there was another protest happening on the West Coast that did not get nearly as much attention. The people of the Pacific Palisades held a protest to speak out against the non-existent rebuilding in the area, a full year after wildfires destroyed thousands of homes and businesses. The people there are demanding an end to red tape, fees, and other things standing in the way of recovery, as well as the leaders who are not doing their jobs. The national media doesn't want to cover this because the leaders in question are Democrats. Yep. They let us burn. Pacific Palisades fire victims protest leadership 1 year after catastrophic wildfires. Palisades survivors protested Wednesday to demand accountability from elected officials on the 1 year anniversary of one of California's most destructive wildfires. We didn't have water, we didn't have reservoirs, we didn't have personnel, and there was no emergency response, said Jeremy Padower, organizer of the event, the rally called They Let Us Burn. So that was the name of the rally. Governor Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass and fire officials were among the leaders and agencies targeted by the demonstrators. Rightfully so, I think. However, Padower said that it was not a politically motivated gathering. Well, because most of the people demonstrating that lost their houses are actually also Democrats, for the most part. It's just crazy to think that we just didn't even have the resources here in a city that is known to have fire danger in the past years. Well, we know that's not what happened, don't we? LA City Council member Tracy Park was among the rally's featured speakers. She told Fox News that LA had not been well prepared for the disaster. No, they just had a plan, and that was to let it burn. So, anyway, yeah, there's pretty good gathering here of several hundred people, it looks like. I don't know if that's all of them. Pretty wild. Anyway, hopefully it won't go away as far as the people won't just give up and take the check or whatever the case might be. But I thought that was an interesting article that was on the Gateway Pundit. Father of ICE agent who killed the agitator Renee Good in self-defense breaks his silence regarding the incident. So this is the father of the officer, of the ICE officer. The Gateway Pundit is withholding the names of the ICE agent and his father to protect their privacy. Well, unfortunately, at least the ICE agent's name is already out there. I won't bother repeating it, but it is out there. Because, of course, like all ICE officers, the left wants to make sure that they dox any ICE officers that they can, and, of course, he was the one involved here, so he was. The father of the ICE agent involved in the unfortunate shooting last week is speaking out and giving his take on what happened. So, obviously, he's supporting his son here, which I think is that's good and to be expected, of course. So I just wanted to really just read the last few sentences. In an interview with the Daily Mail, the agent's father defended his son's actions and pointed out that Good was the aggressor in this incident. She hit him, said the agent's father. He also had an officer whose arm was in the car, so the other guy that was standing next to him. The dad also predicted that his son would not face prosecution for any bogus crimes. Quote, he will not be charged with anything, he said. This is the father talking. The father went on to hail his son's character, particularly as a family man. You would never find a nicer, kinder person, he stated. He is a committed conservative Christian, a tremendous father, and a tremendous husband. I couldn't be more proud of him. So again, that is from the ICE agent's own father. So I just wanted to mention that just because there's, bound to be a lot of negativity, a lot of negative information come out about this ICE officer and, he wanted to murder her and all this stuff, which is just simply not true. The other part of the story that they won't tell you is that very same officer, months prior to all of this happening, I don't know exactly the timeline, but it was a while ago, within the last year, I think, was also involved in another similar incident where he had his arms in a car and the guy who was the illegal, who was driving the car, took off with him pinned into the car and dragged him several hundred feet in the car, which resulted in multiple injuries and stitches and so forth in this guy who was the ICE agent who was involved in this latest thing with Renee Good, who was the shooter there. So clearly he would have had reason to be very careful and not want to have to go through all that again, right? So that's another little twist to the story that I don't think you'll hear a lot of places, is that particular ICE agent had already been injured pretty substantially just a few weeks or months ago. So anyway, I thought this one was kind of interesting. Another Gateway Pundit article. NASA's Crew 11 set for early return to Earth next Wednesday over a serious medical condition of astronaut. I didn't even know that there was a crew up there. Supposedly, at least, it says astronauts will come home early so that one of them can receive medical attention. So isn't that convenient? They can't finish their job. What were they doing? Space exploration is a dangerous endeavor, and during the stay of NASA SpaceX Crew 11 stay on International Space Station, another hazard has arisen: medical issues with mission members. Today we have learned that NASA will bring back to Earth the 4 Crew 11 astronauts from the International Space Station next week. SpaceX says its Dragon spacecraft at the International Space Station is ready to return its 4 Crew 11 astronauts home in an unprecedented medical evacuation on January 14 and 15. So coming up here in a few days. I'm looking to see what's wrong with the person here. Crew 11 astronauts will undock from the International Space Station on January 14th and splash down off the coast of California on the 15th. NASA decided to evacuate the crew, which make up 4 of the 7 astronauts currently aboard the ISS, on January 8th after an apparently serious medical concern arose in 4 of the astronauts. In one of the 4 astronauts. So somebody has something going on medically, and they have to. It's interesting that they're evacuating all of those different people and not just the one person with the problem. While NASA hasn't disclosed who is the crew member with the medical issue, some users on X think they may have solved the mystery. And this post on X says audio of Crew 11 member Kimiya Yui requesting a PMC, private medical conference, yesterday around the time that the news started to break. So this guy right here is who they're saying on X. So very interesting. I don't know. I didn't even realize that they had a crew up there, but never a straight answer. That's what I say. All right. And then UK government video game teaches teens questioning mass immigration could make them terror suspects. You also cannot question Brigitte Macron's authenticity as a woman. You cannot. I don't know if that's part of the video game, but it should be. That would be funny. Britain's globalist, an increasingly authoritarian state, has found a new way to fight extremism, teach teenagers that asking the wrong questions about mass immigration could make them terrorists. According to newly surfaced materials, a government-funded video game... Oh, that'd be fun, huh? A government-funded video game now warns school children that doubting the positive effects of unrelenting mass migration will land them in the crosshairs of counterterrorism authorities. The program, called Pathways, is marketed as an educational interactive experience for students aged 11 to 18. If it's an educational video game, most kids won't want anything to do with it, is what I think. In practice, however, it functions as a digital loyalty test, funded in part by the Home Office's Prevent program, Britain's controversial anti-extremism scheme. The game goes something like this. Players are placed in the role of a white teenage character named Charlie. It doesn't say Kirk, but it might as well. Charlie, newly enrolled in college and navigating modern Britain's ideological minefield. Every decision, what videos to watch, what opinions to express, Even whether to research immigration statistics is tracked by an in-game extremism meter. Wow, this game just sounds like a blast. All right, the premise is simple and utterly unmistakable. Curiosity is dangerous. Skepticism is suspect. And deviation from approved liberal globalist views carries severe consequences. Choose the wrong dialogue option, and Charlie is flagged for extreme right-wing ideology, a category now appears to include asking basic questions about national identity. I wonder if you get your next shot, too, if you ask the wrong questions. You suppose? Because you might. It is a video game, after all. Even the character's gender is carefully flattened. Regardless of whether players select a male or female avatar, Charlie is referred to exclusively as they, a telling detail in a game obsessed with left liberal ideological conformity. Early scenarios in the game set the tone. Charlie struggles academically and is outperformed by an Afro-British classmate, after which players are nudged toward correct emotional responses while being warned against drawing conclusions about immigration or competition. So Afro-British. So it's not even Islamic. It's just, I guess, black versus white versus, it's not even, again, it's not Arabic at all. Very interesting. At several points, the game introduces online posts claiming the government prioritizes migrants over British veterans for housing. Players are encouraged to scroll past these claims silently. Engaging, questioning, or researching them triggers ominous warnings. So don't ask questions, is what they're saying. So you can see where this is going here. It gets worse. I'm sure it does. Anyway, one of the more uncomfortable realities is that these areas have already been the focus of repeated interventions that failed to stop real violence. In one high-profile case, a murderer had reportedly been referred to prevent multiple times prior to committing his crimes. Prevent is the organization here, I guess. So anyway, pretty weird and not at all that surprising, but that's what they're doing over in the UK. Asking questions is dangerous. You can't do that. Another Gateway Pundit article, Bill and Hillary expected to appear before Congress next week to testify on the Epstein ties that they have. Democrat bigwigs face contempt of Congress charges if they don't show up. Are we taking bets on if they show up? Do they care if they face contempt of Congress charges? Do they think anyone will ever prosecute? Of course not. Do I think they'll show up? Not really. No, I don't think they will. I think they've already avoided this before, if I remember correctly. U.S. former President and Secretary of State Bill and Hillary are Democrat powerful figures facing embarrassment or worse due to their long-standing link to Epstein. The power couple is facing contempt of Congress charges if they don't appear before the House Oversight Committee next week to testify in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation. So that'll be interesting if they do show up, for sure. I don't know. I don't know if I believe that they will. It depends on if they think that, the people who are really running the show will bail them back out again if they do happen to get subpoenaed or whatever. So we'll see. We'll see. This is supposed to be happening in the next few days, but I ain't holding my breath. All right, and then a little sad news here if you're Grateful Dead fans, which I am not, but founding member of the Grateful Dead, guitarist Bob Weir, dead at 78. Complete with his pride suspenders or whatever he's wearing there. A founding member of the band Grateful Dead, Bob Weir, guitarist, has died at the age of 78. 2024, Grateful Dead were among the honorees in fake President Joe Biden's final Kennedy Center honors. His family posted a statement about his passing on Instagram. It's with profound sadness that we are sharing the passing of Bobby Weir. He transitioned peacefully, surrounded by loved ones, after courageously beating cancer as only Bobby could. Unfortunately, he succumbed to underlying lung issues. So there you go. So made the jump to hyperspace. Bob Weir from the Grateful Dead. So now he is actually dead. I don't know if he's still grateful, but he's definitely part of the latter group at least. Jerry Garcia, of course, is one of the other founding members. So I never got into the Grateful Dead, but I was interested to see that he had passed. All right, and then this one from Headline USA, FBI names Dan Bongino as replacement. Bongino announced last month that he was departing the Bureau following a brief and tumultuous tenure. Yeah, where he did absolutely nothing and was completely useless. I'm just adding that. The head of the FBI's New York offices has named co-deputy director of the Bureau, replacing Bongino, Christopher Ray, R-A-I-A. Christopher Ray, or maybe it's Raya, who helped lead the response to a deadly truck attack in New Orleans on New Year's Day last year, was picked to run the New York office in April after having served as a top counterterrorism official at FBI headquarters. A former Coast Guard officer, Raya, R-A-I-A, joined the FBI in 2003, and during the course of his 2-decade career has investigated violent crime, drugs, and gangs, as well as overseeing counterterrorism and national security investigations. I wish they would just shut it down. Don't you? Shut down the FBI, close the building. That's what I think. CIA, same thing. Close it down. Put them all on furloughs. Maybe give them other jobs out of the country and close the buildings down. That's what I think they should do. I don't trust any of them, and they are running amok. As we read earlier, the CIA literally took over the 2020 election, which, you know, they've done even worse things, but not good. FBI is right up there with them, just as bad. U.S. seizes Russian oil tanker. We covered this earlier, so I won't bother reporting on this again, but it is here on RT. And then this one I thought was interesting. AI and crypto data centers straining power grids worldwide. Thermal imagery from space offers a rare view of heat output from high-load facilities. So this is kind of interesting. SatView has released a first-of-its-kind 3.5 meter resolution thermal image revealing near real-time operational activity inside one of the largest U.S. Bitcoin mining data centers in Rockdale, Texas. High thermal load zone. You can see how red this area is today, is in the shot. Today's data center build-out is moving incredibly quickly, and the world needs better ways to understand what's actually happening on the ground. SatView Business Development VP Kobti said, because it's Kobti, probably C-O-B-T-I, Kobti said that thermal data imagery gives an objective view of operational activity as it occurs. The International Energy Agency estimates that data centers use around 415 terawatt hours of electricity in 2024, about 1.5% of global power consumption. That was in 2024. Tech giants have been pouring money into AI, driving demand for power-hungry computing since ChatGPT was released in November 2022 and rapidly gained mass adoption. Looking to see what 2025 is looking like, because I don't even see those numbers on here versus 26. SatView cited a estimate that more than $7 trillion would be spent worldwide by 2030, with U.S. demand growing 20% to 25% annually. According to a recent Rest of the World report, nearly 9,000 data centers were operating worldwide as of October last year, with the total expected to triple by 2030. Wow. That's just amazing. Which is why they're trying to bring some of these old defunct nuclear systems back online as well. Probably heard about that. 3 Mile Island and so forth. For more power. Got to power the AI data centers. Yes, and the surveillance grid, I guess, too. All right, I mentioned this earlier. Zionist GOP mega donor Paul Singer stands to make billions off Venezuela regime change op. U.S.-sanctioned Venezuela state-owned oil company Citgo into bankruptcy forced its sale to Zionist billionaire Paul Singer for about $6 billion 2 months ago, and then captured Maduro to take over the country. This comes after the U.S. banned TikTok and forced its sale to a consortium of investors led by Zionist billionaire Larry Ellison. From Wall Street Journal, Citgo is a crown jewel of Venezuela's oil industry. Elliott is set to reap the benefits. This is Paul Singer here pictured. For Paul Singer's activist hedge fund, Elliott Investment Management, Nicolas Maduro's swift exit comes at an auspicious time. Yes, again, what I said before earlier, the people at the top will make billions, and we will save maybe a few cents on our gas bills whenever we go pay at the pump. All right, yep. So the next one I thought was kind of interesting. Zero Hedge article here. Defeated Tim Walz quits governor's race, dodges questions for journalists. Walz, Tampon Tim, appeared defeated during a press conference around noon as he finally addressed the Somali-linked fraud scandal that has ended his re-election bid. Walz's team has shifted from dismissing those who questioned the investigated Somali-linked daycare and autism fraud as racist or Islamophobic to now acknowledging that serious corruption occurred under its leadership. Loser of the year, FAFO. Goodbye, Governor. That's pretty good mock cover there. Walz still found time to attack Trump and the Republicans, blaming them for seeking to take advantage of the crisis. I don't want to mince words here. Donald Trump and his allies in Washington and St. Paul and online want to make our state a colder, meaner place. Nobody, you have already done that. The disgraced governor continued, we've got Republicans here in the state legislature playing hide and seek with potential whistleblowers. We've got conspiracy theorists, right-wing YouTubers breaking into our daycares, demanding access to our children. We've got the president of the United States demonizing our Somali neighbors and wrongfully confiscating funds that migrants rely on. Yes, like untold billions that they're getting for free. Near the end of Walz's press conference, he announced he was dropping out of the governor's race, saying he wants to spend 2026 on governance, not politics. So he must have already made his billions, or at least certainly hundreds of millions, I'm guessing. Nick Sordor post here on Twitter, on X. LMAO, reporters at Tim Walz's press conference were audibly ticked off by Walz running away from his press conference without taking questions. Sorry, guys. Tim has to go change his tampon. Yeah. The clown is down. He probably did have to go change it. All right. So anyway, that's a Zero Hedge article. And yes, loser of the year. He FAFO'd, didn't he? I don't think that. I personally don't think that'll be the end of him, though. He'll pop back up somewhere. They always do, don't they? All right, Maduro article on The Guardian. Deposed Maduro pleads not guilty after capture and shock U.S. attack on Venezuela. President protests innocence in U.S. court as countries at UN meeting condemn Donald Trump's crime of aggression. The deposed Venezuelan President Maduro pleaded not guilty to drugs, weapons, and narco-terrorism charges on Monday, 2 days after his capture. So yes, he's not guilty. He's completely innocent and pure as the wind-driven snow. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that just because I don't know how much you'll actually hear about that as far as what he pleads and so forth. So we'll see where it goes. I don't know. I'm not convinced anything's going to happen to him, but I'm not so sure that it was meant to. He may have already worked out a deal. I have no idea. So anyway, that is a Guardian article. And then thought this one was really interesting. You may remember this person, Michael Bird. Remember that name? Questions grow as Lieutenant Michael Byrd, who shot Ashley Babbitt on January 6, 2021, operates a taxpayer-funded home daycare as $190 million in federal child care funds flow to Maryland. So, who would have expected this? Well, he is basically a Democrat official here, so it's not that surprising in a way. It says that one of his Autopen's last acts before Biden left office was to pardon Captain Mike Byrd. This guy. The D.C. officer who shot and killed Ashley Babbitt on January 6th in cold blood during the protests on Capitol Hill. Gateway Pundit noted, video evidence captured Byrd shooting an unarmed Babbitt without warning as she attempted to climb through a narrow window near a barricade entryway to the Speaker of the House's office area in the U.S. Capitol. Yeah, he shot her in the neck. Following an investigation, Byrd was cleared of any wrongdoing. Yeah, he's been given lots of awards and stuff for shooting and killing her. Although questions remain about the escalation of lethal force without attempts to subdue or detain Babbitt. Anyway, so that's that part of the story. But the interesting part that has just come up, though, says on Tuesday, investigative journalist Paul Sperry discovered and posted that former Lieutenant, now Captain Mike Byrd, and his wife have operated a home-based daycare called Byrd's Family Daycare from their residence in Brandywine, Maryland since 2008. That's nearly 17 years. Public records and listings on sites like Care Lulu confirm the existence of this licensed family child care provider operating under her name, Maryland license number 255727, and located in Brandywine, Maryland, year-round. The daycare is registered and licensed by the Maryland State Department of Education's Office of Child Care, meeting the basic requirements for operation. However, it does not appear on Maryland's list of accredited family child care providers. According to Town Hall, accreditation is optional and merely a sign that a daycare has demonstrated high quality. Sperry alleged that the daycare received $190 million in HHS funds. However, according to the Maryland State Department of Education, $193 million is the total allocation to Maryland distributed across thousands of child care providers. So I guess there's some question as to the amount, but undoubtedly it's millions of dollars. There are no reviews listed at the Byrd's daycare on their website. No reviews. No reviews. The murder Michael Byrd's daycare business has been open for 17 years. No reviews. How likely is that? They've run it since 2008. An inspection was done in 2025, in which she had 4 children. 4 children enrolled. It was still a puzzle how this property was affordable until I discovered the following. Maryland receives significant federal and state funding for its child care scholarship program, with the governor proposing a record $488 million for fiscal year 2025 to support over 32,000 children annually, including major state investments of $270 million for fiscal year 2025, building on previous years to expand eligibility and increase subsidy rates for low-income working families. That amount would not have always been up that high, but I suspect that the wife here in this case has racked up a pretty penny during the last 27 years. Yeah, and they had a total of, 4 kids enrolled and no reviews. This is their house, I guess. Byrd's Family Daycare in Brandywine. So that's it. I mean, it looks like a nice house, but $190 million. Pretty good money if you can get it, I suppose. But it sounds like he's operating what the Somalis were doing in Minnesota. although this was in Maryland. So I don't know. It is very interesting, and it is interesting that it's connected to him, the murderer of Ashley Babbitt. World War III unfolding before our eyes. This is on Armstrong Economics. The neocons have won. Taking Venezuela followed the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis agenda to prevent Russia from installing nukes as a countermeasure for Ukraine. There are now even discussions about using military force to seize Greenland. But the most audacious direct slap in the face to Russia is the seizing of a tanker with the Russian flag. And Putin assumed would be enough to warn the U.S. to keep its hands off it. I don't think that's going to work, do you? Anyway, further article here on Armstrong Economics. Martin Armstrong does good work. I think he has been saying for some time that he believes it's going to be full war. And he's saying nuclear, but I don't know. Anyway, this was posted a couple days ago. So Armstrong Economics, World War III unfolding before our eyes. I don't disagree. I mentioned this way back when. I think it was last spring, perhaps. But now, you might want to go sign up. Kawasaki's new robot horse is going into production. Don't you want a robot horse? Don't answer that question. Here's the robot horse in action, if you forgot. I reported on this back when this video came out, and they were talking about it. Because I guess they assume people need this. I can't imagine needing a robot horse pretty much ever. But they've made a real glitzy video here about it. Of course, it's all AI. Anyway, don't you want to jump over huge crevasses and climb mountains on a robot horse? Doesn't that sound fun? Well, back in April, we came across a flashy and almost entirely CGI video of a bizarre concept for a rideable four-legged robotic horse. The video showed the mysterious concept dubbed Corleo, roaming rocky terrain, leaping over icy crevasses, crossing snowy landscapes without losing its footing, and traversing a dark forest at night, all while carrying an adult rider on its back and being powered by a hydrogen power cell. While the company behind the idea, Kawasaki Heavy Industries, showed off a full-scale model at an exposition at the time, promising a production-ready device by the far-off date of 2050, we had a lot of trouble believing Corleo was little more than pure vaporware. Vaporware, I like that. But the company has now announced that it started to work on turning its ambitious vision into reality and decades ahead of schedule. Decades. As New Atlas reports, which I guess that's a that's a website, newatlas.com. Kawasaki is setting up a dedicated safe adventure business development team with the aim of showing off a functioning prototype at the Expo 2030 in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. The company is hoping to put the unusual motorcycle on legs on sale by 2035, a lofty plan that still keeps the delivery well into the future to avoid near-term embarrassment. And says, we're looking at you, Elon Musk. According to the press release, Kawasaki is also developing a riding simulator that enables riding experience of the four-legged mobility vehicle. So it may only ever be that. Who knows? So I was getting my hopes up there, but now they're saying it's not going to be available till 2035. Well, that's just too bad. None of us will be around then. It's my thing. Anyway, yeah. Robot horse is still on hold, but sooner than we thought, I guess. Very strange. All right. Speaking of robot horses, this is more complete nonsense we don't need. This AI refrigerator shows you ads and won't open if your kitchen is too loud. So if your kitchen's too loud, your refrigerator will refuse to open. I want one. Sign me up. Samsung's newest fridge made waves as CES 2026 for all the wrong reasons. The Bespoke AI Family Hub refrigerator, that's the name of it, Bespoke AI Family Hub refrigerator highlights many of the problems associated with modern appliances, including unnecessary complexity, privacy concerns, and features that address no clear consumer need. It doesn't matter, though. You're going to get it anyway. I'm just adding that. One of the refrigerator's headline features allows users to open and close the door using voice commands, such as open sesame and close sesame. Oh, I get it. Yeah, like sesame seeds, maybe? I don't know. While this may appear convenient in demonstrations, its real-world usefulness is limited. Voice activation requires a quiet environment to work reliably, meaning normal household noise like children or everyday activity can interfere with basic access to food. Or like, in my case, barking dogs. Barking dogs could keep you from opening your fridge. Yeah. Just a little thing to be aware of. Oh, it's only $3,249. Oh, okay. Very affordable, too. That's good. According to Samsung website, it retails for $32.49. The one thing a refrigerator should do is keep things cold. That's it. It needs to do that all the time. It needs to do that without difficulty. This is the inset quote, the most important part of the whole article. And actually, that's true, but is that really news? Instead, Samsung has introduced a system where simple tasks can depend on ideal conditions, internet connectivity, and uninterrupted power. Not to mention a recent viral story where a woman was disturbed by an ad on her fridge that the fridge played to her. Concerns about reliability extend well beyond voice controls. Samsung refrigerators have faced repeated criticism over compressor failures, malfunctioning ice makers, and unstable touch screens. I think AI probably wrote this article because there's very little punctuation in it. Adding additional electronic systems and moving parts to a product category already associated with these issues raises questions about long-term durability. Advertising is another contentious element. The refrigerator's touchscreen displays what Samsung refers to as sponsored content, which means effectively that advertisements will be appearing in your kitchen. You're going to pay $300 for a refrigerator that sends you ads while you're trying to simply open it. No thanks. I can't imagine anybody ever buying one of these things. But I guess if you're going to buy a robot horse, you might want one of these too. I don't know. I was looking to see what the crazy ad that played was, that the woman was all upset about, but I don't see it. Again, I think this is an article written by AI, so it's not really not the best. This is on a website called Rude Vulture. It says this one, Elon Musk, God is the creator. I believe this universe came from something. During a recent appearance on the Katie Miller podcast, Elon Musk offered rare insight into his spiritual beliefs when asked directly about his views on God and creation. When questioned about his current position on God, Musk provided a straightforward answer. God is the creator, he said, quote unquote. The exchange continued when Miller pressed further, asking, "You don't believe in God, though, do you?" Musk's response revealed a nuanced perspective. Well, I believe this universe came from something. People have different labels. When asked who he looks up to most, Musk simply answered, the creator. So there you go. So I guess this probably means people will be saying, oh, he's a Christian now. Last year, Musk referred to himself as a cultural Christian in a conversation with a psychologist, with Jordan Peterson. Although he is not a particularly religious person, he expressed deep respect for the moral framework found in Christian teachings, especially the idea of turning the other cheek. So it sounds like he is open to it, but has not fully accepted Jesus, and that doesn't surprise me one bit. But interesting that he is saying that God is a creator. So I think that's a plus. Read from that what you will. All right, and then this Slay News article, Ice Watch. trained activists to block agents days before deadly Minneapolis shooting. This is the woman who was shot. Explosive new details have emerged surrounding the fatal shooting of Renee Good in Minneapolis, revealing that anti-ICE activists were actively training locals on how to obstruct federal immigration agents just days before the confrontation turned deadly. According to screenshots shared by journalist Julie Kelly, a Minnesota chapter of the activist network ICE Watch held a virtual training session on Monday. Training session was only 2 days before Good was shot dead by an ICE agent in South Minneapolis. The session allegedly focused on how to disrupt immigration enforcement operations, including interfering with agents, blocking movements, and recording confrontations for social media. Critically, Good's wife, Becca Good, was a documented member of the Minnesota ICE Watch group. Yeah, there are a lot of people that are calling for her arrest, by the way. The wife. A few days before this incident, Minnesota ICE Watch held virtual seminars on how to disrupt ICE operations. Since Becca Good can be heard on video taking responsibility for what happened after the shooting, it's safe to assume she directed Renee Good to impede traffic and instigate a confrontation so Becca Good could record and post on social media. Aha! So it was a tag team effort, it sounds like. So that is why some people are calling for her arrest. We will see if that happens. I can't imagine it will. It is Minnesota after all, but I don't know. We'll see. That's a Slay News article, and then so is this one. I think I mentioned this not too long ago, but this is further information on this idea, on this subject. Kentucky launches secure and convenient digital ID app. Kentucky has quietly taken another step towards a digital identity future, rolling out a new mobile ID app that allows residents to carry a secure and convenient, quote-unquote, state-issued digital identification credential on their smartphones. For now, I like that, for now, the credential is limited in scope. The digital ID can be used at TSA checkpoints in select airports, functioning as a voluntary electronic version of a driver's license or state ID for identity verification during air travel. Yes, but you won't need it when you're voting, though. Understanding that. But we all know you can't have an ID when you're voting, but you have to for anything else. Officials insist that participation is optional at this point, and that physical IDs remain valid. So it's a little of both. But they're putting it out there, and you know people will be signing up for it. Governor Andy Beshear described the mobile ID as a secure and convenient option. Yeah, I think it's neither. Mobile ID rollout does not exist in isolation. Kentucky lawmakers have already passed aggressive age verification laws, including House Bill 278, which forces websites hosting adult content to verify that users are at least 18 years old. Yeah, don't you think kids will find a way around that stuff, like, instantaneously? They always do. While officials insist a mobile ID is currently limited to TSA use, the underlying technology is perfectly suited for broader applications, online age verification, access to regulated services, retail age restricted purchases, and potentially government programs. Yes, and also the Mark of the Beast system. Anyway, Kentucky is leading the charge here. So that is not that surprising in a way, but not good news. Minnesota is the tip of the iceberg for fraud. Most voters say. This is a Rasmussen report. The scandal that rocked Minnesota probably signals that fraud is widespread in federally funded benefit programs nationwide, according to a majority of American voters. The latest Rasmussen report finds that 53% of likely U.S. voters believe it is likely that the amount of fraud in Minnesota involving federally funded programs is more than $1 billion, including 35% who think it's very, very likely. Just 28% don't consider it likely that the fraud in Minnesota exceeds $1 billion, while 18% are not sure. Yeah, I think it's several $billion at this point. I wanted to say in the 60s, something like that. 60 billion? I don't know. It's a huge number. That's what's been reported, but who knows? Maybe one of those things where nobody ever will know. All right, and then I've got 3 articles from Wise Wolf Media on Substack. 400 journalists on the CIA payroll, and you still trust the news. They have been playing us our entire lives, and I can prove it, this person says. On the Wise Wolf. It's easier to fool people than to convince them they have been fooled. Mark Twain. Absolutely. I'm looking to see what the 400 they're talking about is. I was talking about the Frank Church Senate hearings. That's interesting. So their Substack posts are pretty informative. There's a lot here. So that's one that I have pulled up, and then we'll come back to that in a second. This one is the second one I pulled up. An essay on thinking for yourself, augmented by the wisdom of cowboy Will Rogers. He says, I am 40 years old, and I feel like I have lived through 1,000 years of stupidity. There's a scene in the 1976 film Network where a man on television tells his audience to open their windows and scream, I am mad as H, and I am not going to take it anymore. Thousands of people do it. They scream into the night because they have finally had enough. That scene was fiction 50 years ago. Now it feels like prophecy. Watch it above and then read the article. So here's the scene here. Embedded. I didn't cue it up so we couldn't hear it. I could play it, but you could only see it. I do not recognize this country anymore. I am in my early 40s, but I feel like I am 70 years old. I have seen things in my life that most of you would not believe if I told you. Things that would keep you up at night, things that fundamentally changed how I understand the world and the people in it. And as bad as all of that was, watching my country devolve into warring tribes of screaming idiots is somehow worse. It is worse because it did not have to happen. It is worse because we did it to ourselves. It is worse because I can see exactly what is being done to us, and I cannot get enough people to listen. What is being done to us, you ask? Let me explain. So here's the Will Rogers quote. There are 3 kinds of men. The one that learns by reading, the few who learn by observation. The rest of them have to pee on the electric fence for themselves. That sums it up. Well said, Mr. Will Rogers. I didn't want to say Mr. Rogers. Divide and rule, the 2,000-year-old trick that still works on you. Divide and rule. Yeah, divide and conquer for sure. So anyway, there's a full article here on this subject matter. I thought that was a good one. Then the third one here is a patient cured is a customer lost. How the billionaire class turned medicine into a wealth extraction machine. Yeah. A patient cured is a customer lost. John D. Rockefeller, oil tycoon and the creator of the modern medical industry, said a patient cured is a customer lost almost 100 years ago, and we have been sick ever since. Hospital stay in 1970 cost around $300. Today, an average is over $15,000. That is a 50-fold increase in 5 decades, while wages have barely doubled. Your grandfather could pay for a week in the hospital with a month's salary. You would have to sell your car and empty your savings to cover the same stay. I don't even think that most people could do that. Nobody in the mainstream media is asking why this happened, because the same billionaires who own the media own the hospitals and the insurance companies and the pharmaceutical corporations that are bleeding you dry. So that is another article here on Wise Wolf. So, yep, it's all true. And you guys remember my my wife was in, I guess it was, when was that? Back in the end of August, was in a really bad car accident. She was fine, but she got roughed up pretty bad, and her car was totaled. And you would not believe the 1-day ER visit bill that was originally sent to us. Of course, the person that hit her, it was that person's insurance that should pay for it, and we're still working through that even many months later at this point. But yeah, $35,000 one day in the ER. Can you believe that? I don't mind saying it just because, I mean, we're not paying it. You know, it's coming out of the insurance is going to have to pay for it. This woman that hit her insurance will have to pay for it. $35,000 for 1 day in the ER. I mean, it's just like unbelievable. Unbelievable. But yeah, a patient cured is a customer lost. So going back to this one for a second. The Mark Twainism. I really like Mark Twain. I always have. Part of it is he was a Missouri guy, and I was born in Missouri. So I think that's why. In 1977, Carl Bernstein published an article in Rolling Stone magazine that should have burned the American media industry to ashes and salted the earth where it stood. Bernstein was not some fringe blogger screaming into an empty room. He was the reporter who helped bring down Richard Nixon. He held the credentials and the sources and the documentation to back up everything he wrote. And what he wrote was that 400 American journalists were on the payroll of the CIA, taking money and direction from Langley while pretending to report the news objectively to the American public. 400 journalists at the New York Times and CBS and Newsweek and Time Magazine, the Washington Post, the most trusted names in American news, were feeding you whatever the intelligence community told them to feed you. They did it for decades. They did it while you trusted them. They did it while your parents trusted them. They did it while your grandparents sat in front of the television every night, believing they were watching honest men and women report the facts. Yes, see, I've had to explain all this to my 80-something-year-old mother, and she understands it now, but yes, she did not know about Operation Mockingbird, and that is what we're talking about here. So yes, the church committee exposed everything, and nothing has changed. Yeah. They were even talking about the heart attack guns and stuff like that in the church meeting, in the church Senate meetings. I want to see what year that was. 1976. Senator Frank Church during the 1976 Senate hearings that exposed the CIA for what any honest person would call high treason against the American people, which is why I said they need to shut it down. Trump needs to just shut it down. You've never heard of these hearings because they spent 50 years making sure that you would not hear about them. Yeah, I don't know if it mentions it here in this article. That may be what he's holding up here. I don't know. Heart attack guns. Do you know about that? Mm-hmm. Yep. Pretty wild. Good stuff. Wise Wolf Media on Substack. Definitely sign up for their Substack. Okay. Going back to the news here for a sec. Dozens missing after Philippines garbage mound collapse. Killing 3. A garbage mound. Landslide of garbage in the coastal Philippine city of Cebu. Killed at least 3 people on Thursday and left over 24 others missing. 24 others are missing. The mountain of garbage at a landfill in a village of Binalu collapsed, triggering an avalanche of refuse that buried over 100 villagers. A total of 67 victims were rescued, while with dozens more hospitalized or missing. So it sounds like it's going to be way more than just 3 people dead. They just haven't found them yet. They're buried under trash. Yikes. Another sign that we are in the end times, I think. Getting buried by trash. Trash Mountain. Hundreds reported dead after Iranian crackdown on protesters. Been a lot of people talking about what's going on in Iran. I personally hold to it. It's probably CIA involvement to some degree. I don't know how much, but seems like they would be, given the timing. And Israel wanting to hit Iran and so forth. Approximately 544 people are dead and more than 10,000 have been taken into custody during the Iranian government's crackdown on ongoing demonstrations. So isn't that convenient? And Trump says he will have to go to war with them if they continue to crack down on their the polite people in their lovely society. Which, I mean, it used to be a great society. I don't know if it is anymore, but the mullahs run things now. So it is a Islamic cult at this point, but most of Europe is too, so I don't know. Vance announces new assistant AG position. How about that? A new position was announced by Vance in that Trump will create a position for assistant attorney general. He said the president will nominate someone in a few days and that Senate Majority Leader Thune is already coordinating a vote. The assistant attorney general will have broad authority to probe federal investigations and will report directly to the president and VP. The first priority, Vance said, would be investigating fraud in Minnesota. Yeah, okay. If he doesn't get bogged down with a million other things first. He or she will begin work in Minnesota before expanding to fraud investigations across the country, according to the vice president. So I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad, but anyway, that's what they're trying to do, apparently. So it's a new assistant attorney general. Why don't they just fire the actual attorney general and start over there? That might be a good place to start versus creating a new job. Get rid of Bondi. Get rid of Patel. All right, Leo Hohmann's Substack. Get ready for more chaos globally and within the U.S. as Trump claims total unchecked power to start new wars abroad while threatening to invoke Insurrection Act at home. Yeah, and there are a lot of people calling for him to invoke the Insurrection Act. I personally am not real sure on that because I haven't looked at exactly what that means. But yeah, there are people calling for that, which maybe that would help ICE to do their job. I don't know. But yeah, it's definitely going down a dangerous road for sure. So this is another good article, lengthy article from Leo Hohmann on his Substack. Natural News. I just pulled up one article from here, but Israel mulling establishment of military base in Somaliland. Well, they helped establish Somaliland, so that does not surprise me at all. Somaliland officials confirmed discussions with Israel about hosting an Israeli military base, despite earlier denials. This follows Israel's formal recognition of Somaliland on December 26, sparking backlash from Somalia and regional actors. I'm sure there's been quite a few millions or maybe hundreds of millions or maybe billions of dollars being exchanged hands there to build a Somaliland. Israel recognizes Somaliland, but not Palestine. No. We have to get rid of the Palestinians and move them to Somaliland. Then they won't be able to be called Palestinians anymore. I guess maybe that's their answer to the, the dual occupational situation with Israel. They're not going to split it up at all. They're just going, Israel will just own everything. And they'll send all of the people who are not already dead from Gaza over to Somaliland. It seems pretty obvious at this point. That's a Natural News article. And then Wine Press Substack. Google's AI image generator Nano Banana and Gemini have made spotting fake images next to impossible. Some have to call Nano Banana the Adobe Photoshop killer. So that's interesting. I'll have to see what happens with Adobe Photoshop. I've been using Photoshop for years. Nano Banana was first launched in August and has received a number of updates since then. In November, it was added to Android devices to alter an image with a text prompt. AI generator has the best character and image consistency compared to the other models thus far. Text has been a struggle for many AI models up to this point, often looking wobbly, misaligned, blurry, grammatical errors, and misspellings. Yes, text has been a real nightmare with anything related to AI pictures. You just want to not even have text on the pictures if you can help it. That's the way I've been. Any images that I've had to generate using AI, I've told it no text and just add it myself. Nano Banana is able to make more consistent and clean text. So there's a video here introducing Nano Banana Pro. So just what you wanted, huh? Nano Bananas. I don't know. Elon Musk and Sam Altman claim 2026 is the year for AI singularity. Wow. I hope not. Trump's crypto firm World Liberty Financial applies for bank charter. Scammer in chief. Yeah, I don't really care about the whole crypto thing. I know some people do. And then let's see here. That was Wine Press. I've got a few articles pulled up from InfoWars. Israel ready for new ground attack on Gaza. Isn't that handy? And they've already got somewhere to send all of the Gazans, the Palestinians. Israel has drawn up plans for a new ground operation in parts of Gaza controlled by the Palestinian group Hamas. Wall Street Journal has reported. Yeah, well, I don't know. It seems to me like they've already pretty much invaded everywhere they can in Gaza, but maybe I'm wrong. Minnesota's most notorious Somali daycare at center of fraud scandal abruptly shuts down. The Equality Leering Center has shut down. Minneapolis Child Care Center thrust into the spotlight by a viral YouTube expose on Minnesota's rampant daycare fraud scheme has officially shut down. State records confirm the Quality Learning Center, which the sign said Leering Center, requested its license closure. Oh, they probably will still keep receiving the money. They just change the name and move somewhere down the road. That's my guess. I don't know. Or move into a different building. One of those buildings that was hosting, dozens of other daycares and other healthcare companies in it. So, yes. Closed down. Trump orders plan to invade Greenland. Should the U.S. go ahead with an operation, it could lead to the destruction of NATO from the inside. Well, that would be nice, although we could just pull out of NATO and then have the same effect, couldn't we? Trump has ordered his senior commanders to drop a plan for a potential invasion of Greenland. Invasion of Greenland, a move that could potentially lead to a complete collapse of NATO, Daily Mail reports. I don't know. I think that I like the idea that we read through earlier, which is where if they're going to have something that they're going to do with Greenland, instead of an invasion, they should just work out a lease option. That seems like the most obvious thing to do. It doesn't involve troops and military, but maybe I'm wrong. All right, and then I found these Not the Bee articles. I think they're both kind of related as far as where they are, so I wanted to mention both of them just because they're kind of a little funny, a little out there. Utah allows AI to start writing prescription refills, and I guess the future is now. I like the doctor with the computer face. That's funny. That's right. Robot doctors will be writing prescriptions in Utah thanks to a new legislative rule that creates a regulatory sandbox framework for companies that are being innovative with AI. Essentially, that sandbox means that the state suspends state license regulations and caps the penalties if things go wrong for consumers. By providing temporary regulatory relief that enables innovation and crafting agreements that facilitate the deployment of AI in healthcare, the state aims to foster innovation, enhance patient care, strengthen provider capacity, and reduce costs. Through these collaborations, Utah seeks to demonstrate real-world results that inform best practices for the safe and effective adoption of AI across the healthcare system. The program specifically deals with prescription refills for chronic patients, meaning that's not recommending new meds and mostly just approving or declining refills. But what could possibly go wrong with AI operating autonomously in the healthcare system? No one has ever been able to manipulate AI before, right? Well, medical AI systems that pop up suggestions for doctors about diagnoses, or treatment plans have often had an abysmal failure rate, according to critical reports. Critical decision support systems generate such volumes of alerts that 90 to 96% are now routinely overridden by physicians. Wow, that's pretty much all of them. Some doctors receive 100 to 200 alerts daily, leading to documented cases of physicians typing "this alert is not helpful" or entering random characters just to bypass the interruptions. But the Utah system will completely bypass doctors altogether. So I guess they avoid bothering the docs. So we see where this is going, don't we? So I guess if you're in Utah, watch out, especially if you have prescriptions. That's not good. So this one also is Utah, and I thought this one was really wild. AI-generated police report mistakenly claims officer was transformed into a frog. Utah's Heber City Police Department has been testing out artificial intelligence software to save the department time on writing police reports. The new technology can save an officer 6 to 8 hours of work transcribing body camera footage and writing reports. But the downside is that's not always accurate, as in the case of a recent report that claimed a police officer had been magically transformed into a frog. And Lionel Richie says, "Say what?" It turns out that the body cam footage was picking up the movie The Princess and the Frog playing in the background. Oh, I see. Must have been playing for his daughter or something. I can see the confusion. Prince Naveen's costume is somewhat similar to a police uniform, and he did magically transform into a frog, but it's a pretty major glitch if the AI program can't tell the difference between a cartoon prince and a real-world officer, frog or not. Heber City Police Sergeant Keel told Fox 13 News. The body cam software and the AI report writing software picked up on the movie that was playing in the background, which happened to be The Princess and the Frog. That's when we learned the importance of correcting these AI-generated reports. Yeah. I'd say proofreading is pretty important, especially in the case of official police reports. Just goes to show you how you can't believe anything you read on the internet, even if the source looks official. Try as we might, the science of turning humans into frogs hasn't yet caught up with the magic of Disney. Pretty funny. So that's how that happens, I guess. Had an open mic and picking up the kid playing the movie. Anyway, crazy stuff. All right, and then GeoWatch for this week, we have chemical weather whiplash, January 10th article, so from yesterday. A deadly new wave of whiplash weather, 60s to snowflakes, ? Buckle up, Indiana. Winter's whiplash is here. And it's actually calling that winter whiplash by ABC News. That's pretty interesting. Weather whiplash, gusty winds, weekend warmth, then an Arctic blast. The completely out of control climate engineering cabal is doubling down on toxic chemical ice nucleation, flash freeze surface cooldowns, whenever and wherever they have enough manipulated atmospheric moisture to do so. Every single engineered cooldown comes at the cost of an even worse overall meltdown. How much more can the environment and human health handle before total collapse? The powers that shouldn't be are preparing as fast as they can for exactly that. Yep. So that's GeoWatch for this week. Another good one. Mr. Dane, episode 544. Chemical weather whiplash. And to see that in action, we can go to the scheduled weather for this week. Looks like it does oftentimes. We got the split down the middle. Hot and cold. That is not nature, friends. Not at all. And that is something we talk about pretty much every week on this show. They're keeping the eastern half of the U.S. cool oftentimes. And you can see that that is what will be happening between January 17th and January 21st, 2026. That is the scheduled weather coming up as far as the temperatures go. So we have the west heating up and cold in the east. Pretty much exactly split down the middle. Been saying it over and over again. Here's Climate Reanalyzer showing, again, 5 degrees below normal. This is starting on, the 15th. 5 degrees below normal where I am. So they're bringing back the cold. The cool. 2 degrees above normal by January 18th. So we have the 15th and the 18th. So in that 3-day span, we go from below normal to above normal, and that's the bounce back where the warmth starts creeping back in again as the cool dissipates, because it is artificial. The artificial chemical cool down, just like what Mr. Dane talks about. This is a Climate Reanalyzer. If you guys ever want to look at this, we link to this in the Substack post. Same as this, and of course GeoWatch as well. So yeah, make sure you're on the Substack list if you're not already, and you will get all these links sent to your inbox. And then climateeconomy.com for this week, roundup of climate news. Ocean temperatures just hit a dire new record. World's ocean absorbed more heat in 2025 than in any other year on record. So wow. December's data just came in, and global total column precipitable water once again set a new record high for a 36-month running average. In other words, when it rains, it pours. So yeah, that is the drought and deluge aspect of the whole geoengineering process. 2025 observed the lowest Arctic sea ice extent and the lowest sea ice volume for their yearly average values. So you'll hear oftentimes that the Arctic sea ice is expanding and it's all a fraud and the Earth is not warming up and all this stuff. But the truth is, they just changed the way they measure sea ice, the ice pack. Now they measure any amount of slush as sea ice, so it doesn't have to even be solid, and they call it ice pack. So that's how you get the headlines of, oh no, the sea ice is expanding, when in reality it's doing the opposite. So the people that are actually doing the research here are, posting things like this where they're seeing sea ice volume is lower and lower and lower every year. So anyway, there are other articles here. We're talking about drought and deluge and cyclones, all kinds of stuff going on. And you can thank the geoengineers. What to make of record warmth this winter in Houston. Yeah, I mean, the news doesn't seem like they're really talking about record warmth at all. I know in Nashville they just set, a couple days ago, set an all-time high, 72 degrees in Nashville a few days ago. And then within 24 to 36 hours, it was cold. So we go from record high to back to January temperatures. Normal January temperatures, whatever normal is. But, it's the warmth part doesn't make the headlines. It's only the cool down and the cold that does. That's what they talk about. So therefore you get people saying, oh no, the Earth isn't heating at all. We're entering a new ice age. Well, that's only for the eastern half of the U.S., apparently. Is that right? Is only the eastern half of the U.S. entering the new ice age? Is that what's going on? Because that's what you'll hear from a lot of people who don't really know anything about this or don't understand what geoengineering is actually doing. We're not entering a new ice age. This is artificial. This is chemical cool down. This is what's actually happening. Okay? Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. And then, so yet again, another Charles video here. The soon-to-be Antichrist. King Charles finally does it. He's the hardest working royal in 2025. Hardest working royal. Is that an oxymoron or what? After years of being beaten by his hard-working younger sister, Princess Anne, the king is now officially the hardest working royal of 2025. He achieved this while undergoing weekly cancer treatment. So the soon-to-be Antichrist is very hardworking. So you should hire him for the job. He's hired to be the biblical Antichrist, which we won't get into this week, but suffice it to say, his name and title add up to 666 in English and Hebrew. Does it matter? I think it does. Iran threatens Israel, U.S. as regime kills thousands in nationwide protest crackdown. So now this site is saying thousands. We were seeing hundreds before in some of the other articles, so who knows exactly what to believe, but the Israel 365 News would certainly never lie, would they? But yeah, it's saying thousands, so I don't know. Iran's Islamic regime is facing its most serious internal challenge in years as nationwide demonstrations continue into a third week. Yep. Says, as the death toll rises and images of slain protesters circulate online, Tehran has escalated its rhetoric against the U.S. and Israel, explicitly threatening military retaliation if Trump authorizes action against the regime. So, do you think he will? I don't know. I'm betting he will. I just don't know what degree it will go. But it seems like this whole protest thing, to me, points more towards boots on the ground. I hope I'm wrong, but because what else could it be? I mean, they're not going to start bombing. They could start another bombing campaign against the ballistic missiles operations, I suppose, but aren't countries entitled to have any defense anymore? Ballistic missiles is something that many countries have. So that was the latest cry. The next thing that the Israelis were screaming about was the ballistic missile program and so forth, instead of just the nuclear program that they're always 2 weeks away from having. Yeah. So anyway, that is a Israel 365 News article. And then just a few of the most recent things that I've posted on X. Just found some funny stuff. All talk, all cameras, zero action. The inaction figures: Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino. Thought that was good. Yep, very true. And the eyes are even pretty much exactly correct on him. And then this is the here's the Dan Bongino and Jeffrey Epstein scene. You may not have seen this, but it's very accurate. From Titanic. Of course, the ship's going down, doesn't matter, but they're really enjoying themselves. It's lovely. And then we have a post from Mr. Dane on the dimming for sharing the film, which is a really good one. And then this is the GAN, Global Alert News, for this week. Yeah, this one's a good post. When Charlie was murdered by radical leftists, the conservative movement did not riot in the streets, loot, vandalize, nor demand the death of others. Instead, I watched them sing hymns, pray, and more astonishingly, forgive. That's the movement that I wanted to be part of. Matt Von Swall says. Yep. And then about the ICE thing here. If she successfully ran over the ICE agent like she was trying to do, they would all be celebrating his death. Remember that. So that's a really, really good point. We're getting caught up in what actually happened versus what could have happened. If she successfully ran over the ICE agent like she was trying to do, they would all be celebrating his death. That's absolutely 100% true, just like they did Charlie. And here's Dan in action again. Okay, here's the food pyramid. We mentioned that earlier. How does one man manage to block the sun, cover your produce in fruit film, bioengineer mosquitoes, insert fake meat into the food supply, and openly advocate for population control without being considered a global threat? That's a good question. Anyway, those are a few of the posts and reposts, I guess, on the X platform for the Diamond Report. So please follow along if you're not already. I'm seeing my numbers go down. Not that surprising, I suppose. Let me play one short video here, and then I wanted to load up a couple of desktop screenshots here, a couple images I wanted to mention before we go away tonight. And I can do that easier, I think, if I have a video kind of playing in the background for a minute. So let me do that, and we'll be right back.
Whatever happens in Iran at this point could easily be teed up for a false flag. Just somebody in a building shoots into a crowd, and there's Trump and Netanyahu, and we've got the aircraft carriers, strike groups going in.
Al Arabia writes, already the regime has made numerous threats should its nuclear facilities come under attack from either Israel or the West. Compiled from information leaked from an Iranian military source pointed to how Iran had put together a secret plan to retaliate after such an attack, which was codenamed Qiyamah, or Judgment Day. The IRGC would immediately respond through missile attacks on the U.S. coalition's Arab and Muslim allies in the Gulf region, hitting military bases occupied by the U.S. coalition, as well as a series of suicide operations targeting U.S. and British interests in the area. But hasn't this playbook been in motion all along? And who would ultimately benefit from a war with Iran? Iran's crude oil and central bank are holdouts when it comes to globalism's grip, and they would be instrumental in starting World War III, which would fatten the New World Order's pocket and put an end to the global populism threatening New World Order domination.
Bibi has repeatedly been under indictment, issues of corruptions, issues of dysfunction. Even Mossad head leaders in the past 5 Mossad leaders say this is not the way to approach the Middle East or Iran or the Palestinians. And Bibi has ignored all that. And basically he's kowtowed to Trump, and he has tried to manipulate his way into Trump's good graces so that we would in some way end up fighting their war.
Iran is like 5 times bigger than Iraq and 10 times bigger than South Vietnam. The Houthis, with drones and truck-launched small missiles, were able to drive our Navy out of the Red Sea. They drove us out of the Red Sea because the modern math doesn't work for our type of warfare. They'd fire a $100,000 missile, or a couple of them, at a ship, and we would have to spend $5 or $10 million worth of extremely high-tech surface defense missiles to try to stop these $100,000 drones. And our destroyers don't carry an unlimited number of these. A couple dozen and they're out. They have to leave the area, return to a port that's not nearby because they can't be launched at sea. They can or reloaded at sea. They can only be reloaded dockside. So the math just doesn't work for American power projection the way that it used to. So if we get sucked into quote unquote rescuing Iranians, what does that mean? We're gonna drop Delta Force and SEALs into Tehran because we think that some people have been mistreated.
We know there's a big political, changes happening. What is all this massive movement really about?
I do agree with exerting our influence in our hemisphere because the unipolar moment that began in the 90s with the fall of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War.
Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev has been removed from power, and there are tanks now in the streets of Moscow. Vice President Gennady Yanayev says he has taken over as acting president, as the head of state of a special state committee. You're watching live pictures from Moscow this morning.
The unipolar moment is done. It's going to be a tripolar world, Russia, China, America. If you just look at the military, the 3 most powerful military nations, or it's the U.S. and the West financial system versus the BRICS, which has China, Russia, Brazil, India, South Africa. Either way, America is no longer the 1,000-pound gorilla that can just walk around the country smacking little monkeys around. That day is over. We couldn't even stop the Houthis from firing missiles in the Red Sea. So that's a key choke point. The Red Sea cuts off going all the way around Africa.
Good information there, I think, don't you? I liked his presentation from InfoWars. And something to think about for sure. We couldn't even stop the Houthis. That was Matt Bracken, by the way, if you missed that. Yeah, so I was welcomed to this message earlier this afternoon on my Facebook account for no reason that I could even think of. I mean, I haven't had any warnings or anything at all. It literally just popped up on my Facebook account. I'm logged in on a couple different computers, and it was real. I mean, it was definitely absolutely something they did. They suspended my account on Facebook for some reason. I don't know why. I never did find out why. And then you start going through, okay, well, instead of trying to figure out why, because they just give you some sort of really lame excuse of how it's, terms of service or whatever, instead of trying to guess what it was that I did, which I didn't, knowing I hadn't received any warnings lately, I wasn't that worried about it. So I just, do the next thing, and that is, instead of trying to figure that out, I went through the hoop jumping. You have to jump through the hoops, and you have to set up a mobile phone, receive a text, put in a code, and then upload a recent picture, like facial picture, for identification, and then your driver's license or whatever, which they'd already had that information before when my account had gotten hacked or something, and then they close your account down. So I sort of think that's what happened this time as well, because even though I was getting this notice, and anyone going to my pages on Facebook would have been getting this same notice, meaning that it is suspended, within really just, I would say, about an hour, they put everything back the way it was. So that was surprising, but I had to jump through the hoops. So I had to, I guess, prove who I was or something. I don't know. So the Facebook account was down, and now it's back. But it was my Facebook profile, and then also all of the pages that I have associated with that profile on Facebook. So it was my business profile, my Diamond Report profile, and several other pages that I have on there as well. So it was all down, but now it's back. So Facebook playing games, YouTube playing games, it just never stops with these crazy social media platforms. So I just wanted to mention that. And here's the Substack if you had not ever seen that, but you just drop your email address in and hit subscribe. Or you can click no thanks if you don't want to put your email address on the list and receive it in your inbox. If you click no thanks, it will take you to the main posts here. The most recent one is front and center. But you can scroll down here a little bit and find all of my other links along this column over here on the right. But the most recent post is right here in the middle, and then the two after that are over here on the left. So this is last week's post. They look like the same because it's the same thumbnail, but one is all of the links from the show last week, and the other one is the podcast, the audio podcast that I put out first. So we'll do the same thing again tomorrow night, probably by tomorrow night, and then Tuesday. So make sure you're on the Diamond Report Substack list, and you can join that by going to, let me post a little banner here so you guys have it, diamonddisc.substack.com. Diamond Disc is my company name. Diamond Disc Audio is the full company name. And diamonddisc.substack.com is where that is. And then if you want to support the show, Subscribestar is another way to do that. You can do that through Substack or Subscribestar. I will say, unfortunately, I have lost 2 more subscribers just in the last few days. I don't know if that is, you never know because people don't really tell you. I don't know if that's somebody just adjusting their budget, perhaps, or if it's something that they don't like about the show. I don't know. You never really hear. So I know for a fact that it was $25 a month and with 2 different people. So a 20 and a 5 people that unsubscribe. So that definitely hits me in the pocketbook a little bit, just because I'm paying for live stream software and stuff every single month, and the charges never go down; they always go up. So you have software, you have different license fees you have to pay for. You have ongoing subscriptions like live stream software and so forth. So it's very expensive. It's not, and I'm not really doing this other than for really as it's a fun outlet for me, but it's also something where I feel like most people seem to identify with what I'm trying to do on the show, and that's simply report what's happening as we're in the end times. These are the headlines. These are the things that help prove that we are indeed living in the last days. And we're seeing it unfold week after week. And so that's what this show's about, honestly. And I do think that Jesus will be returning very soon, probably 2028. And we've made, many videos on that whole subject. So yes, Feast of Trumpets 2028. I haven't really changed any of that at all. And we haven't really gone into it a whole lot lately. However, it does seem like that's the way things are unfolding. And it would be really great to have people supporting what I'm doing. If not, I will probably try and continue on as long as possible. I already made the executive decision a few days back that I'm not going to renew the store. That is a source of, it's a fun thing with the products and stuff, but it is a source of financial burden in a way, because I have to pay for the store to even exist, even though those products are made when somebody orders something, whether it's a shirt or a hat or whatever. They don't really exist until you order something, but that is the merch store, and we can put the link back on the screen here for that. If anybody does want to order something from the merch store, it's shop.thediamond.report. But that stuff will be going away in April. So, and I'm trying to mention that just so people will know it, just because they don't really hear every single show, and the merch that is there now will no longer be available at that point. At some point in April. I'm not exactly sure what day yet, but that's coming up pretty soon. So if you're interested in grabbing a shirt or a hat and supporting the show, you can do that. There's other merch on there. I didn't pull up the page here, but Subscribestar and the merch and the Substack are the best ways to financially support what I'm doing if you are so inclined. If you're not, that's totally fine, and we will keep the show free as long as possible, which I don't really foresee that changing. And then, the other option here is, if you want to join Substack, join Subscribestar, one or the other, that's great. If you can't, though, the next best thing to do is to share the show. Just simply share the link, whether it's, on Facebook, share the YouTube link, share the Facebook video link, share the Rumble video link, or whatever. The videos that I post each week go on the same platforms. They go on Facebook. Facebook usually is not an issue for me. It was this week. It was today for some weird reason, but I think it had more to do with the whole identity thing, unfortunately, which I've had to prove that before. So it goes on Facebook video, it goes on Rumble, it goes on BitChute and Brighteon, as well as stays on YouTube. And the final version gets re-uploaded to YouTube as well, both channels. So anyway, those channels are in the description box down below the video here if you've missed that before. But yeah, it's Diamond Disc, and then also the Take It to the Lord in Prayer End Times Dates channel on YouTube. So thank you guys for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. It is coming up on midnight, so we'll call it a night for tonight, January the 11th. And then the next show will be starting at 9 p.m. Central Time on Sunday the 18th. So we'll be out a week from now, and we will do it all again then. Hope you guys have a blessed week this week. Thanks for being here tonight and hanging out with me. I certainly appreciate that. And many of you guys are here week in and week out, and Mando, I appreciate it. I really do. It takes a little while to put these shows together every week, but you guys show up and watch and interact and leave messages and things like that, time in and time out. So thank you guys for doing that. It means a lot to me that you guys care enough to tune in, because I know your time is precious as well. So blessings to you all. I hope you guys have a wonderful week this week. And hopefully our crazy, insane unfolding of the end times here won't get any crazier this week, but I have a feeling it probably will. I'm sure many of you guys feel the same way. So anyway, hope you guys have a blessed one, and we'll do it again next week. Love you all. Talk to you again real soon.